3 years ago, my own sister sent me to a reform school with her very own hands. The fake young master claimed I cost the company 100 million. Without a second thought, my eldest sister threw me into that hellhole. She said I needed to learn some manners. My biological parents? They just stood by and watched with cold eyes, like I was some kind of stain on their perfect lives. Now, 3 years later, I've learned my manners and come back. But now, they're the ones full of regret. It's been 3 long years, and here I am again, standing right outside the gates of the Joe family mansion. Honestly, I never thought I'd set foot in this place again for the rest of my life. That night, 3 years ago, this is exactly where they dragged me out. I remember it so clearly. It was pouring rain that day. The ground was completely covered in mud. 2 security guards grabbed me by the arms and violently dragged me out. I clung to the doorframe for dear life. My nails bent and tore right open. Blood smeared all over the frame. I bet you could still see the stains if you looked closely today. I kept looking back, screaming into the house. Screaming for mom and dad. Screaming for my older sisters. I swore to them I didn't touch that 100 million from the company. I swore I didn't set Joe Ming up. I begged them, just believe me this one time, please. But nobody believed me. They just stood up there on the steps, staring down at me. Like they were looking at a rabid dog. Like I was just, born rotten to the core. My dad couldn't even be bothered to look at me. He just turned his back. My mom was covering her mouth, crying. But she was crying over how she could have ever given birth to a monster like me. My eldest sister, Jo Chingyue, coldly ordered the guards to hurry up. She didn't want the neighbors to see the spectacle. My second sister just pushed up her glasses and said, throw him in and let him be properly reformed. My third sister, Jo Yui, actually looked like she wanted to speak up, but one sharp glare from our eldest sister. And she didn't dare make a peep. And as for Joe Ming, he stood hiding behind everyone else, his head bowed, his shoulders trembling. He looked like he was absolutely terrified, but I was the only one who saw it. That split second when he looked up, the vicious smirk in his eyes. That smirk, I will never, ever forget it for as long as I live. 3 years, 1,095 days. I'm back. It's a sunny day today. The sun is blazing. It's so bright it makes my eyes ache. I'm standing right outside the Joe family gates, holding onto a faded canvas bag. Just this one bag. It holds every single thing I've owned over the last 3 years in that place. I look down at my clothes. A dull gray shirt, washed so many times it's practically faded white. But I've got it buttoned up, neat and tidy. Even the very top button is fastened. The doctor told me, dressing properly is the very first step to maintaining order. The doctor also said, that people like me, need order more than anything. And I am a man who follows the rules now. The heavy gates swing open. The first one to come rushing out is Joe Ming. He looks exactly the same. So pale and pristine, dressed in soft, light gray loungewear, with his hair falling gently across his forehead. Looking just like a harmless, innocent little bunny. The moment he sees me, his expression flips faster than you can blink. First, he freezes in shock. Then his eyes instantly well up with tears. His mouth curls up into a smile, forcing out this look of pure, heartbreaking joy. He practically sprints over to me. Bro, you're finally back. He grabbed my arm, his voice thick with tears. Bro, you lost so much weight. You must have suffered so much in there. Mom, Dad, and I, we missed you every single day. Praying for my return, thinking of me every single day. I didn't feel a single ripple of emotion. I just looked down, looking at the hand gripping my arm. These very hands were the ones that personally handed that fake evidence to our dad 3 years ago. Bro, why aren't you saying anything? Joe Ming blinked up at me. Are you still mad at us? Bro, I didn't have a choice back then. All the evidence pointed to you. Before he could finish, Mom came running out from behind him. She was wearing a dark red cardigan. Her hair was much grayer than it was 3 years ago, and the wrinkles on her face had deepened. The exact moment she saw me, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. She stumbled clumsily down the steps, throwing her arms wide open to hug me. Ting ting, my ting ting. She pulled me into a desperate embrace, holding me so tightly that her whole body was shaking. You've suffered so much. It's Mom's fault. Mom is so sorry. I just stood there, completely motionless, her tears rubbed against my neck. Warm, carrying a faint, salty scent. She still smelled of that familiar perfume. I used to find it comforting. Used to feel like this was the scent of home. But right now, there was only one thought in my head. What do her feelings have to do with me? The doctor said emotions are just noise. I don't need to listen to noise. I took a step back. The movement was slight, but steady, just enough to slip right out of her arms. Her hands froze in midair. That completely stunned expression on her face. How should I put it? It was actually quite amusing. Ting ting, she froze. What's wrong, Mom? Bro just got back, he's probably just not used to it yet. Joe Ming quickly jumped in to smooth things over, reaching out to support Mom. Don't be sad, Mom. I'm sure bro still cares about us deep down. My third sister, Jo Yui, ran out the door too. She was wearing a cream-colored long dress. Her hair was flowing down, and her eyes were totally red. Ting ting, she ran over and tried to grab my hand, but I stepped aside and dodged her. Her hand stopped in midair. She gave an awkward smile. Ting ting, how did you get so terribly thin? Did you not eat well in there? I'll have the kitchen make you something delicious in a bit. I looked at their faces. To be honest, I could clearly see the tears and the heartache in their eyes. But I felt absolutely nothing inside. It was just this deep emptiness where my heart used to be. Nothing at all, like a dry well. You throw a stone in, and you hear absolutely nothing. The doctor was right. Emotions are something that can be trained right out of you. The sound of high heels echoed from the stairs. My oldest sister, Jo Qingyue, was coming down. She looked exactly the same, dressed in a dark suit. Her hair pinned up flawlessly, without a hint of expression on her face. Her eyes were cold enough to freeze you to death. She was the actual head of the Jo family, and the one who personally sent me to that correctional facility. She stood on the stairs. Her eyes still filled with that same scrutiny and judgment. You're back, she spoke, her voice as icy as ever. It has been 3 years. Did you learn how to behave in there? The moment she said that, the air in the living room instantly froze. My mom stopped crying. My third sister stopped talking. Even Joe Ming went quiet. He stood off to the side, his eyes darting around, waiting to watch a good show. They were all staring at me. If this was 3 years ago, hearing those words, I would have caved immediately. I would have kept my head down, my eyes red, whispering, "Sister, I know I was wrong." I would have desperately explained how good and obedient I was in there. I would have begged her to stop looking at me like that. But now, I lifted my head and looked at her jaw. The doctor said, looking directly into someone's eyes can trigger unnecessary empathy. Looking at their jaw or collarbone is both polite and keeps you rational. I spoke, my voice very soft, very steady, completely flat. President Joe. As soon as those 2 words came out, Jo Qingyu's brows fiercely furrowed. My mom gasped. Ting ting, what did you just call your sister? I ignored her and continued delivering my rehearsed lines all at once. I need 3 things. First, my own private room. Second, my communication devices. Third, my personal identification documents. I spoke word by word, neither rushing nor dragging, just like checking in at a company's front desk. My mom panicked. She stepped forward and tried to grab my hand. Ting ting, what nonsense are you saying? This is your home. I am your mother. Were you traumatized in there? Tell me, mom is right here. I dodged her hand again. Mrs. Joe. I looked at her. Excuse me, but can my requests be processed right now? Those words, Mrs. Joe, were like a knife, stabbing straight into her heart. Her face went deathly pale. Her lips trembled, and large tears spilled down her face. What did you just call me? Are you out of your mind? Ting ting, I am your mother. If I don't call you Mrs. Joe, should I call you Ms. Joe instead? I asked her back in a genuinely sincere tone. The doctor taught me this. That extreme honesty is the absolute best blade to cut through emotional blackmail. I wasn't trying to piss her off. I was simply stating the facts. She is indeed my biological mother, but legally speaking, she's just Joe Janan's wife. Jo Qingyue let out a cold sneer. All right, that's enough, she snapped, cutting off my mother's crying. She glared at me. Looks like spending 3 years locked up in there actually taught you some tricks. You really think playing this pathetic, pretentious game with your own family is gonna make us cater to you? She turned and ordered the butler. Give him back his ID and his old phone. Tell him to go to the guest room at the very end of the 2nd floor. I'd love to see just how long he can keep up this deadpan act. She thought I was acting. She genuinely thought I was doing this to guilt trip them, or as some kind of silent protest. I didn't bother arguing. The doctor said that right and wrong aren't based on feelings, they are based on behavioral evidence. Whatever they choose to think is purely their own brain activity. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. I grabbed my canvas bag, took my ID and phone from the butler, and turned toward the stairs. Right as I reached the landing of the stairs, Joe Ming caught up with me. He blocked my path. The people downstairs couldn't see us from this angle. The look of heartache on Joe Ming's face vanished without a trace, instantly replaced by a hushed, fake sense of worry. I am so glad you're finally back, he sighed, leaning in dangerously close. But bro, whatever you do, do not bring up that $100 million incident from back then. Our eldest sister is still furious. If you stir up trouble again, they might just lock you back up in there. As he said those words, his eyes were glued to my face. He was testing the waters. He wanted to see me act just like I did 3 years ago, jumping up and screaming, "You were the one who embezzled the money, not me." And then, he could conveniently fall down the stairs, giving the whole family the perfect excuse to condemn me all over again. Such a familiar, pathetic script. I stared right into his hypocritical face. Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you just want me to keep taking the abuse? I asked him in a whisper. Zhou Ming completely froze. He clearly didn't expect me to throw out such a seemingly random, out-of-left-field response. Bro, what on earth are you talking about? I am only doing this for your own good. I cut him off, the doctor said. That lying is bad, and framing people is also bad. I kept my eyes locked on his, my voice dropping even softer than before. As if I were preaching an absolute truth. If you were just trying to remind me, then you need to provide actual evidence proving that those $100 million had anything to do with me. But, if you were trying to threaten me, I paused for a second, my tone remaining painfully polite. Whoever crosses the line first will be the one who suffers the consequences. Now, please step aside, young Master Zhou. Blocking someone's path is terribly rude. Zhou Ming stared at me like he had just seen a ghost. There was absolutely no anger in his eyes. And no fear, either. What he saw was just a completely dead, empty void. I completely ignored his frozen body, simply stepping right around him. And walking straight to the guest room at the end of the hall. The moment I shut that door, I locked out everything that had to do with the Zhou family. The room wasn't big, but it's kept pretty clean. The sheets are brand new. There is even a small pothos plant on the desk. I stand by the window, looking down at the perfectly trimmed bushes in the garden below. It's been 3 years. This house hasn't changed a bit. But I'm not the same Zhou Ting from 3 years ago. I pull out my old phone, the one that hasn't been charged in 3 years. I plug it in. The moment the screen lights up, I see countless unread messages, all from 3 years ago. I don't open them. Instead, out of habit, I open my notes app and type out a single line. Observation log, day 1. Physical boundaries established. The doctor was right. Keeping a log is the best way to stay grounded. I sit on the edge of the bed, watching the sky outside slowly fade to dark. Zhou Ming's face flashes in my mind again. That fake, sickening concern. 3 years ago, I was completely fooled by that exact look. I treated him like my own flesh and blood, told him absolutely everything, and believed every single word he said. And the result? He turned right around and sold me out. Sold me out completely. I don't hate him. I really don't. The doctor said holding on to hate takes energy. I just don't have that kind of energy anymore. But I remember every single thing he did. I remember exactly how he set the trap, step by step. How he pushed me into the abyss, little by little. I remember all of it. Footsteps echo in the hallway outside. Someone knocks on the door. Ting ting, it's Mom. I made some soup for you. Could you open the door, please? I don't move. Ting ting, I know you're angry, but we're family. Blood is thicker than water. What a beautiful phrase. Why didn't they say blood is thicker than water when they sent me away 3 years ago? I close my eyes, listening to the woman crying outside my door. I feel absolutely nothing. Observation log, end of day 1. Noise level, medium. Emotional fluctuation, 0. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I wake up right on time. It's a habit I picked up inside. No matter how tired I was or how late I went to bed the night before. My eyes have to open at exactly 6. Because if you're late, you get punished. If you don't get out of bed, you get punished. Everything has to follow the rules. I wash up and hang the towel exactly 5 centimeters from the edge of the wall. The doctor said, when you can't control the outside world, you control your environment. I stare at my own face in the mirror for a while. I've gotten so thin. My eyes are sunken in. My skin is rough, too. But my eyes are brighter than before. Clearer than before. The doctor said, that's because I've purged all those useless emotions. It's nice. By the time I go downstairs, the rest of the Zhou family is already there. The long dining table is covered with a fancy breakfast spread. They even have my favorite sweet pastries from that old traditional shop. Before, whenever I came home, my mom would always buy pastries from that exact place for me. When my third sister, Zhou Yui, saw me, her eyes lit up. She started to stand up to grab my hand, but my eldest sister stopped her cold with a single glare. Sit down, Zhou Qingyue ordered coldly. I walked to the very end of the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. I didn't make a single sound. Since you are back, we need to lay down some ground rules right now. Zhou Qingyue set down her coffee cup. The clink of the porcelain sounded incredibly sharp in the dead silent dining room. She pulled out a printed sheet of paper from beside her and slid it right to the middle of the table. Rule number 1. Without my explicit permission, you are not allowed to step a single foot outside the front gates of this house. Rule number 2. You will not touch any of the company's business, and you will not secretly contact any of your old acquaintances. Rule number 3. You are absolutely forbidden from spreading any rumors to the outside world about what happened over the past few years. The Zhou family cannot afford to lose face like that again. She glared at me, her tone sounding exactly like a judge handing down a death sentence. Do I make myself perfectly clear? My mom whispered softly from the side, trying to smooth things over. Qingyue, Ting Ting just got home. Isn't all of this a bit too much? Mom, Zhou Qingyue cut her off sharply. The whole reason we sent him away in the first place was to cure him of that disgusting habit of lying all the time. If we don't lay down the law right now, he is just going to destroy our family all over again. I looked down at the piece of paper in front of me. The words printed on it were perfectly clear. Every single rule was designed to turn me into an invisible, lifeless object. Zhou Ming, who was sitting right next to her, thoughtfully handed her a tissue. His voice was sickeningly gentle. Don't be so angry, sis. I'm sure my older brother will understand that you are just doing what's best for him. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with the smug pity of a winner. Brother, you shouldn't blame our eldest sister either. The family is just looking out for you. As long as you behave and do exactly as you are told, we will still be one big happy family. The words, looking out for you, felt like a dull, rusty saw, grating slowly against my already scarred over wounds. I put down my silverware, slowly raised my head, and looked straight at Zhou Qingyue. Boss Zhou, tell me, did you guys bring me back home? Or did you just transfer a prisoner to a new cell? Zhou Qingyue's face instantly dropped. What the hell did you just say? I stared right back. According to the laws of our country, illegally restricting someone's personal freedom is a serious crime. I pulled out my beat-up old phone. Right in front of everyone at the table, I pressed the record button. Now, please look right into my phone and repeat those 3 house rules you just gave me. The dining room instantly went silent. A dead, terrifying silence. My dad slowly lowered his newspaper, his eyebrows knotting tightly together in deep anger. My mom covered her mouth in absolute shock, staring at me like I was a complete stranger. Zhou Qingyue looked like she had just been slapped across the face. She shot up from her chair. Zhou Ting, you actually dare to lecture me about the law? Just who the hell do you think you are? I calmly replied, I am Zhou Ting. I stared blankly toward her collarbone, keeping my voice completely flat and steady. My doctor told me, if you cannot figure out the true nature of someone's actions against you, you should start recording to preserve the evidence. The demands you just made go way beyond the scope of simple house rules. That is forced, illegal imprisonment. I stood up and slipped my phone into my pocket, moving as calmly as a schoolteacher. If you're not going to repeat yourself, I'll just pretend that piece of paper doesn't exist. Zhou Qingyue was shaking with rage, pointing at me with a trembling finger. You ungrateful little bastard. You spent 3 years locked up in there and you didn't learn any manners. But you sure learned how to turn on your own family. Second sister, Zhou Rushao, hadn't said a word until now. She pushed up her glasses, her eyes holding the cold, calculating stare of a professional lawyer. Ting Ting, you've changed. She finally spoke. You've gotten smarter. You know how to pull stunts like this to get attention, or rather, to threaten us. She turned to look at Zhou Qingyue, her tone dead certain. Big sister, in psychology, this kind of behavior is called acquired antisocial personality. He isn't trying to reason with us, he's trying to establish a sense of control. I stared at my lawyer of a second sister. 3 years ago, she was the one who used her airtight logic to stitch every fake testimony into a fatal chain. Locking down my conviction, second sister, I addressed her with total politeness, since you know the law so well. Then you should know that without a court-ordered restraining order, nobody has the right to restrict a citizen's freedom of movement. As for getting your attention, I gave a self-deprecating smirk, barely curving my lips. What makes you think I still want anything to do with you people? My doctor told me, never try to wake up someone who's pretending to be asleep. Just rip their blanket right off. I turned around, ignoring the colorful look of shock on their faces, and walked straight toward the door. Stop right there. Zhou Qingyue barked from behind me. I stopped and looked back. Is there something else, President Zhou? Where are you going? To get a replacement SIM card. I replied calmly, and drop by the hospital while I'm at it. What are you going to the hospital for? My mom blurted out in a panic. The doctor said that being in a high-pressure environment for so long means I need regular psychological evaluations, just to make sure I'm not violent. I looked at Zhou Ming, letting my gaze linger on his perfectly fake face for 1 second. After all, young Master Zhou looks pretty fragile. If I accidentally bump into him, he might just accidentally trip and fall again. Zhou Ming's face drained of color. A flash of sheer panic at being seen right through crossed his eyes. I pushed the front door open. The sunlight was a bit blinding. I didn't look back, because I knew that right about now, inside the Zhou family living room, Zhou Ming was definitely running to second sister, plotting how to use even more professional tactics to permanently get rid of an unstable factor like me. And all I have to do is wait. The doctor said that bad people always leave traces behind because of their greed. All I need to do is wait for them to slip up and be the one to settle the score. Observation log, day 2. Mind games initiated, targets showing severe emotional volatility, noise levels rising. By the time I walked out of the hospital, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. The evaluation results were pretty good. The The doctor said all my scores are totally stable and I show zero aggression. No self-destructive tendencies, either. It's just that on the emotional empathy scale, my score was terrifyingly low. The doctor said that's normal. Anyone who's been through that kind of environment will have some degree of emotional blunting. I don't really feel anything. Anyway, whether I have emotions or not, doesn't matter to me anymore. I just got my replacement SIM card, slid it into the tray and turned the phone on. A flood of messages poured in, all from 3 years ago. 19 from classmates, and 79 from former colleagues. And a few were from Joe Yui. Ting Ting, where are you? Ting Ting, please text me back. Your sister is begging you to just say something. I didn't even read them. I just deleted everything. Let the past stay in the past. I walked over to the bus stop and waited. An old lady was standing next to me with a grocery basket, probably just coming back from the market. She glanced at me, probably thinking my clothes looked way too worn out. She stared for a second longer, but didn't say a word. I like this feeling. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody gives me that look anymore, the one that says, "Oh, you're that unfortunate son of the Joe family." The bus finally arrived. I got on and found a window seat. The bus rumbled along. I stared out the window at those familiar streets. The exact same streets I walked countless times 3 years ago. To be honest, this city is just as lively and bustling as it used to be. But when I look at it, it's like staring at a faded old photograph. Everything is still there, yet it feels like nothing is left. My phone buzzed. It was a text from that unknown number. It just said one sentence: "Send me today's evaluation results." I replied with a single word: "Okay." The doctor said, "She's the only person who actually cares about me, even if her caring is a little cold, a little ruthless, and a bit terrifying." But she was right. In this world, rules are the only things that won't betray you. Only order lasts forever. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. My mind drifted back to that night 3 years ago, right after they locked me up. Locked in a room with 4 blank white walls, no windows, no bed, just a rock-hard chair. They forced me to sit there, staring at the wall all day long. I cried the first day, but by the 4th day, I couldn't even make a sound. I just sat there, staring at that blank white wall. I kept staring and staring, until everything suddenly made sense. Later on, the doctor told me, it's called learned helplessness. After that, she started teaching me other things. Teaching me how to observe, how to control my emotions, and how to replace feelings with logic. She said that only by mastering all of this, would I ever walk out of there, and never be hurt by anyone ever again. And I really did learn it. The bus pulled up to my stop. I got off and started walking back, and right as I reached the gates of the Joe family mansion, it was already dark outside and the front gate was standing open. Inside, the place was brightly lit, and I could faintly hear chatter and laughter. Looks like we had guests over. I stepped inside. The living room was packed with people, mostly distant relatives from the Joe family. Along with a few business partners, they were sitting together in a circle, sipping tea and nibbling on pastries, chatting and laughing away. But the moment they saw me walk in, the living room fell dead silent. Every single pair of eyes snapped right to me. Those looks, how'd I even put it? It was like they were staring at a monkey in a zoo. Full of curiosity, and a hint of morbid fascination. So that's the one who was locked away for 3 years. One of my second aunts lowered her voice, whispering into the ear of the person next to her. Keep it down. I heard people who come out of places like that aren't quite right in the head. Little Ming is so much more sensible. Just look at how well he's been running the company. I guess blood ties really don't mean much compared to the one you actually raised. Every single word drifted loud and clear right into my ears. I didn't break my stride. Walking straight over to the water dispenser, I grabbed a clean glass, filled it with warm water, and took a slow sip. My doctor once told me, other people's opinions are merely their own subjective projections, not your objective reality. I didn't care, but I did notice something. Joe Ming wasn't in the room. Where did he go? Just as I wondered that, footsteps echoed from the stairs. Joe Ming was coming down. He had changed into a fresh outfit. A light blue casual suit, his hair styled immaculately. Wearing that picture-perfect smile of his. The moment he spotted me, his eyes lit up, and he strolled right over holding a glass of champagne. Bro, you're back. He smiled, pitching his voice just loud enough for everyone around us to hear. Bro, why didn't you tell anyone you were going out today? I was so worried about you. He stepped right up to me and looked me up and down. Bro, these clothes of yours are way too worn out. Let me take you shopping for some new ones later, okay? As members of the Joe family, walking out dressed like this just invites people to laugh at us. He sounded oh so caring, oh so thoughtful. The relatives nearby nodded in approval, praising Joe Ming for being so generous and kind-hearted. Treating his older brother so well. I kept my mouth shut, and just kept drinking my water. Joe Ming probably felt that wasn't quite enough, So he leaned in a step closer, dropping his voice to a whisper only I could hear. Look, bro, even if you're back, nobody in this house actually wants you here. You're just a piece of trash nobody wants. The second he said it, he took a quick half step back, slapping a look of sheer terror onto his face as he threw his hands up in the air. Bro, please, calm down. I was only trying to give you some friendly advice. All the relatives gasped in shock. Someone was already yelling for security. Zhou Qingyue stepped out of the crowd, her face livid with anger. Zhou Ting, are you out of your mind again? Do you have any idea what kind of occasion this is? She didn't even bother to ask what had happened before pinning the blame right on me. Zhou Ming cowered behind Zhou Qingyue, his shoulders trembling. He looked like a startled rabbit. Big sis, please don't blame him. He just got out of that kind of place. It's normal for his emotions to be unstable. I'm fine. As long as he doesn't hit me, it's okay. He was hinting to everyone that I had violent tendencies, that I was a danger to society. I stared at his face, perfectly masked in innocence. Then I looked at Zhou Qingyue's furious glare. And finally, my gaze swept over our parents standing nearby. They were frowning too, their eyes full of deep suspicion. These were my so-called family. I set my glass down on the table. The heavy base hit the surface, making a sharp click. I took a step forward, walking right up to Zhou Ming. He thought I would react like I did 3 years ago, breaking down, screaming, and desperately explaining that I never meant to hurt anyone. A fleeting look of smug triumph flashed in his eyes, but I didn't break down. I raised my hand, and with absolute, chilling calmness, slapped him hard across the face. The sharp smack echoed like a thunderclap, echoing through the living room. The force of the blow whipped Zhou Ming's head to the side, sending him stumbling back a couple of steps. The champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering to pieces on the floor. Dead silence fell over the room. Everyone was completely stunned. Even Zhou Qingyue froze in her tracks, like she couldn't process that I actually hit him. Cupping his red, swollen cheek, Zhou Ming stared at me in disbelief. Tears instantly welled up in his eyes. Why did you hit me? My mom let out a piercing scream, rushing over to shield Zhou Ming. She shoved me fiercely. Are you insane? How dare you strike him? Stumbling back a couple of steps, I steadied myself. Facing the hostile glare of the entire room, I casually adjusted my shirt cuffs. My voice remained in that flat, spine-chillingly calm tone. The doctor said slander is bad behavior, and I am in charge of stopping bad behavior. I stared right at Zhou Ming, my eyes completely devoid of emotion. You just attacked me verbally, and you used body language to create the false impression that I was threatening you. That is slander. Right and wrong aren't about feelings. They are about behavioral evidence. Whoever crosses the line first faces the consequences. That slap was the settlement. My words plunged the living room into an even more suffocating silence. They stared at me like they were looking at a soulless, emotionless machine. Zhou Qingyue finally snapped out of it, trembling with sheer rage. Zhou Ting, not only are you completely unrepentant, but you've resorted to violence now? It seems 3 years in rehab taught you absolutely nothing about being a decent human being. She shrieked, turning to yell at the butler. Go get some rope and tie him up. Call security. Call the cops. The atmosphere in the hall instantly dropped below freezing. Zhou Qingyue's voice was still echoing through the room as the butler brought 2 security guards over to surround me. My mom held Zhou Ming tightly in her arms, like she was protecting a fragile baby from a vicious monster. Her eyes were filled with nothing but pure disgust toward me. My dad, Zhou Jinan, stepped out from the crowd, his voice deep and heavy, carrying an unquestionable authority. Zhou Ting, you have truly disappointed me. He stared at me, his eyes brimming with disappointment and rage. 3 years ago, you stole money and lied to us. We sent you away to be educated, all because we wanted to save you. And yet, here you are, committing a violent assault in front of everyone. Do you have any respect left for this family at all? I looked right back at him. He hadn't changed a bit. He still loved standing on his moral high ground, passing absolute judgment on everything. He didn't even ask what Zhou Ming had said to me. He only cared about the end result, that I had resorted to violence. The 2 security guards reached out to grab my shoulders, but I shifted my body slightly to the side, dodging their hands. My doctor once told me that when an environment loses all order, the only true sense of security comes from the rules. I ignored the guards, and pulled my phone out of my pocket instead, tapping the screen a few times. My hands were so steady they didn't shake even a fraction of an inch. Zhou Qingyue sneered. What's wrong? Trying to record us again? What good is a recording inside your own home, Zhou Ting? You're not walking out of those doors today. I raised my head and gave her a single look. Then, right in front of everyone, I dialed 3 digits. 110. The entire living room fell dead silent. My dad's face turned as dark as a thundercloud. He clearly hadn't expected me to call the cops myself. The call went through almost instantly. Hello, I'd like to report a crime. Someone at the Joe family residence is unlawfully restricting my personal freedom and attempting to commit physical violence against me. My voice was dead calm, my words clear and precise as I gave them the exact address of the house. There are multiple eyewitnesses on the scene, and all evidence has already been backed up to the cloud. Please dispatch officers immediately. I hung up the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. Zhou Qingyue was so furious she actually laughed. You called the cops? Zhou Ting, you actually dare to call the cops on your own biological parents and your sister? Director Zhou, you've got it all wrong. I corrected her calmly. The police aren't here to arrest family members. They're here to deal with lawbreakers. She opened her mouth to say something, but my dad grabbed her arm and held her back. He stared at me, his eyes showing a flicker of real scrutiny for the very first time. He was a man who cared about his reputation above all else. If the police actually showed up, tomorrow's headlines would read, Joe family's biological son calls the police on his very first day back. The family's stock would tank instantly. Ting Ting, put the phone down. We can talk about this. My mom started softening her tone, trying to diffuse the situation with that nauseating fake motherly love. We're only doing this for your own good. Just apologize to little Ming and we can pretend none of this ever happened. My doctor once told me that cheap tears and belated comfort are nothing more than useless noise. I cut her off, glancing down at my watch. The police will be here in 5 minutes. Mr. Joe, you have 5 minutes to think this over. Whether to tell the guards to back off or wait for the police to force them to. The security guards looked at each other, not daring to move a muscle. They were terrified of getting sued, too. Zhou Ming hid in my mom's arms, his face deathly pale. He had probably never seen a scene like this. In the past, all he had to do was shed a few tears. And I would be locked in solitary confinement, starved, and sent off to that nightmare of a place. But now, my tears have run dry. Even my heart was left behind in that correction center. 5 minutes later, sirens wailed in the courtyard. Flashing red and blue lights reflected against the living room's French windows. It was blinding. My third sister, Zhou Yui, scrambled to open the door in a panic. The police officers walked in with stern faces. Who called the police? I raised my hand and stepped forward, pushing past the others. I did, officer. Here is my ID. I handed over my newly replaced identification card. And along with it, I handed over my phone. This is an audio recording of my oldest sister, Ms. Zhou Qingyue, declaring a restriction order against me. And here is a video record of these security guards attempting to illegally detain me. Zhou Qingyue's face froze. My second sister, Zhou Rushao, the lawyer who claimed to have never lost a case, also stood entirely dumbfounded. After listening to the recording, the officer frowned and looked at my dad. Mr. Zhou, in our country, restricting someone's personal freedom is a crime, even if they are your own flesh and blood, as long as they are adults. They are independent individuals. My dad took a deep breath, barely maintaining his dignity. Officer, this is just a family matter. The kid just came back home and is emotionally unstable. The records show that his emotions are perfectly stable. The officer closed his notepad, speaking in a strict, businesslike tone. On the contrary, it's you people who are ganging up on and cornering the caller. Mr. Zhou, if you don't want to go down to the station to give a statement, please dismiss your guards immediately. And promise not to restrict Mr. Zhou Ting's legal rights again. The officer turned to look at me. Mr. Zhou Ting, if you need to file for police protection or move out of here, we can provide assistance. I looked at that whole big family. My dad's livid face, Zhou Qingyue's furious glare, my mom's stunned disbelief, Zhou Ming's sheer terror, and the complicated expressions on my second and third sister's faces. No need, officer. I gave a very polite bow. As long as they understand that I am no longer governed by family rules, but solely protected by the law, that'll be enough. After seeing the police out, you could hear a pin drop in the living room. The relatives had long since found excuses to scatter. The only ones left were the core members of the Zhou family. My dad stood in the shadows, glaring daggers at me, as if trying to see right through me. Just what exactly did you learn in there? He asked in an icy voice. I paused my steps on the stairs, my hand gripping the freezing handrail. I learned how to deal with animals. I turned around, looking down on them from above. The doctor once said, when a person is stripped of all their dignity, they either rot in the mud or learn to use the system against the system. Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, CEO Zhou. I called them out, one by one, my voice completely flat. Welcome to my world. With that, I went back to the guest room and quietly locked the door. Observation log, day 4. External system intervention, successful. The noise has been forcibly cut off. The Zhou family is starting to feel afraid. The doctor said, fear is the only medicine that can wake them up. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking out into the pitch-black night. Downstairs has gone quiet now. All that shouting is gone. The Zhous must have scattered, heading back to their own rooms. Left to process what happened tonight. I wonder what's going through their heads right now. Are they cursing me out for being an ungrateful brat? Or regretting the day they locked me away? Or maybe they aren't thinking at all. People like them never look in the mirror. They only push the blame onto everyone else. I lay back down, staring up at the ceiling. The ceiling is pure white, exactly like the solitary cell back at the Reform Institute. Back then, whenever they locked me in there, I used to just lie like this, staring up at the ceiling, for an entire day at a time. Sometimes I'd wonder, what if I didn't make it out of there alive? Would they feel sad? Would my mother shed a tear? Would my father regret it? Would my sisters even remember me? But then it hit me, no, they wouldn't. They'd only breathe a sigh of relief, glad they finally didn't have to deal with their black sheep of a son anymore. That's why I couldn't let myself fade away. I had to survive, make it out alive, and stand right in front of them, so they could look at the very son they tried to destroy. And see how he made it back. My phone buzzed once. I picked it up. A new message, from that familiar number. Log tonight's events. I typed back. Already logged. Very good. Keep observing. I set my phone down and closed my eyes. The doctor was right. I am her creation. She molded me with her own hands. Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today. But sometimes, I still wonder if I hadn't crossed paths with her back then. What would I be like today? I probably wouldn't be here anymore. Lost to that four-walled white room. Broken by those endless daily jolts and solitary lockups. Consumed by that endless despair. So, I really owe her my thanks. Even if her methods are a little terrifying, she kept me breathing. And that's enough. Observation log, day 4, concluded. Noise level, high. Emotional fluctuation, 0. On the morning of day 2 after the police left, the butler knocked on my door, saying Mr. Joe and CEO Joe were waiting for me in the study. I put on that faded gray shirt, buttoning it up tight all the way to the very top collar, as I headed downstairs. The living room was dead silent. My mom was sitting on the couch, her eyes swollen like peaches. When she saw me coming downstairs, her lips trembled. She wanted to say something, but no words came out. I ignored her and walked straight toward the study. The door was left open. My dad was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, with Joe Chingyue standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. This room was the absolute center of power in the Joe family. In the past, just stepping foot in here would make my palms sweat with anxiety. I'd constantly watch their faces, terrified of saying the wrong thing and pissing them off. Terrified they'd tell me I wasn't as well behaved as Joe Ming. But now, all I could think about was how good the soundproofing was. I walked right in, pulled out the chair across from the desk, and sat down. I moved softly, making sure the chair didn't scrape against the floor. My dad stared at me, his brows furrowed tightly. He was a man who cared about his reputation more than anything. He was used to being in total control, but the cops showing up last night, that made him finally realize his old disciplinary tactics wouldn't work on me anymore. So, he switched to a businessman's negotiation tactics. Joe Chingyue walked over, and slammed a thick stack of documents in front of me. The pages fanned out, with the top page reading non-disclosure agreement and renunciation of inheritance. Take a look. Her tone was ice cold, carrying her usual condescending attitude. As long as you sign this, and promise to keep your mouth shut to the public, and promise to never lay a finger on Joe Ming again, you'll get a monthly allowance from the family trust fund, $500,000 a month. You can go on living comfortably as the spoiled young master of the Joe family. But only if you start behaving. I looked down at the paperwork. It was packed with endless clauses, all designed to restrict me. I couldn't breathe a word about being sent to the reform school 3 years ago. I couldn't damage the reputation of the Joe family, or Joe Ming. And I had to voluntarily give up all shares and inheritance rights to the Joe group. The penalty for breaching the contract was an astronomical figure. My dad took a sip from his teacup. Ting ting, it's not that there's no place for you in this family, but the stunt you pulled last night was a complete embarrassment. Your oldest sister and I have talked it over. As long as you sign this, we'll let bygones be bygones. We're only doing this for your own good. It's to keep you from going down the wrong path again. We're doing this for your own good. That phrase really comes in handy for them. 3 years ago, they used that exact same excuse, when they shoved me into a car and locked me away in that hellhole where I couldn't even see the sun. And now they were using it again, trying to buy my silence for the rest of my life. I wasn't even angry. I didn't feel a single ounce of heartbreak. I simply picked up a pen from the desk and popped off the cap. Seeing how compliant I was, a mocking smirk crept onto Joe Chingyu's face. Glad to see you finally know your place. If we had known money was all it took, things wouldn't have gotten so ugly 3 years ago. I'll sign it, I said softly. My voice was like a flat line, completely devoid of any emotion. But the rights and obligations in this agreement are totally one-sided. I'm going to need to add one extra clause. My dad slammed his teacup down, glaring at me sharply. What do you want to add? Is the money not enough for you? Joe Chingyue scoffed coldly. I just shook my head. Holding the pen over the blank space at the end of the contract, I deliberately wrote down a single line. The handwriting was as neat as printed bold text. After finishing, I turned the document around and pushed it in front of them. I agreed to give up my right to the inheritance. I agreed to keep it a secret. But in exchange, I demand to retain the right to sue for illegal detention and emotional damage from 3 years ago. The study instantly fell into a dead silence. My dad's face completely changed. Zhou Qingyue slammed her hand on the table, pointing right at my face and yelling. Zhou Ting, are you out of your mind? Retain the right to sue? You want to take us to court? I stared coldly at her jawline. The doctor said right and wrong aren't about feelings. They're about behavioral evidence. You want to use an agreement to control what I do now. So I'm going to use the law to settle the score for what you did in the past. That's what we call a fair trade. My dad abruptly stood up. I am your biological father. Your oldest sister is your own flesh and blood. And now you want to settle the score with us? Do you have no conscience at all? His voice was booming. It was so loud that the lids of the teacups rattled. I remained seated in my chair, not even blinking an eye. Yes, I am going to settle the score with you. I looked straight at my dad. Because the doctor said, loving yourself is the golden rule. I will never compromise for anyone's tears or family ties again. Stop making a scene. Zhou Qingyue was trembling with rage. Who do you think you are? What proof do you even have to sue us? The phrase stop making a scene perfectly triggered my internal system protocols. I wasn't even angry. Instead, I felt my body temperature dropping rapidly. I stood up and straightened my shirt cuffs. My tone became more polite than ever before. Director Zhou, do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you just want me to keep taking the abuse? What makes you think that I still need you to believe me? I looked into their shocked and alienated eyes, and gently placed the pen on the table. I won't explain myself. Explanations are for people who actually care. Since we can't reach an agreement, then the deal is off. I'm not signing. What you owe me isn't an apology, and it isn't money. It's consequences. I turned around and headed out of the study. Behind me, my dad and Zhou Qingyue glared fiercely at my back. For the very first time, they realized that I was no longer the boy who would cry and beg for mercy just because of their harsh words. I had become a machine running strictly on its programming. A monster they could no longer control. I pulled open the study door. Outside, Zhou Ming was standing in the hallway. He was holding a plate of sliced fruit, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. He had obviously been eavesdropping by the door for a long time. When he saw me come out, he instinctively took a huge step back. His hands trembled, and a silver fork dropped from the plate onto the carpet. He stared at me. His eyes had lost that arrogant provocation and manipulative victim act from yesterday. Now, there was only raw, undisguised panic. In the past, all he had to do was fake an illness and shed a few tears to spark my anger. He'd make me lose my mind, and then, using our family's hands, he'd trample me into the dirt time and time again. But now, he realized, I'm done begging for love. I'm done fighting for attention. I don't even care about the money, or my inheritance in the Zhou group. You can't guilt-trip a madman who wants absolutely nothing. I stopped in my tracks, and glanced at the fork dropped on the floor. Mr. Zhou, I called out to him. Zhou Ming trembled all over. "B brother, you can keep acting." I leaned in slightly, and told him in a dead steady voice. "But I suggest, next time you pull a dirty trick, wipe your tracks a little cleaner. Because the second I catch you, I will send you straight to that place, and make you relive my 3 years all over again." Zhou Ming's legs gave out. His back slammed hard against the wall. He couldn't even stammer out a single coherent comeback. I straightened up, walked right past him, and headed back to my room. I pulled out that old phone, and opened the Notes app. Observation log, Day 5. Negotiations have broken down. Refused to sign the unfair terms. Test results. They just want an obedient son, but all I need is a fair courtroom. Addendum. Target subject Zhou Ming is exhibiting extreme fear. The doctor said this is a good sign. Back in my room, I stood by the window, staring at the garden below. Zhou Ming was still glued to the hallway, not moving an inch. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. He must have been genuinely terrified. After all these years, he's never seen me react like this. The old me was like a beaten dog. No matter how badly I was treated, I never dared to bite back. But the me standing here has already died once. And someone who's died once, isn't afraid of a damn thing. My mind suddenly flashed back to my days in the correction center. When I first got thrown in, I didn't know the rules. I got punished every single day. Locked in solitary every day. One time, I was electrocuted until I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, my mouth filled with blood. I had bitten through my own tongue. Someone was sitting right next to me, wearing a white lab coat and gold-rimmed glasses. Her face was completely blank. "You're awake?" she asked. I just stared at her, too weak to speak. "I'm Wei Yuru. I'm the doctor here," she said. "From today on, you answer to me." I thought she was there to save me. It was only later that I realized. She was there to rebuild me. She told me I was too weak. Too easy to hurt, too easy to control. She said I needed a completely different way to live. How? She drilled those rules into me, one by one. Don't trust anyone. Trust only the rules. Trust only the evidence. Trust only yourself. At first, I just couldn't do it. I was always crying, always missing home, always clinging to the hope that mom and dad would come rescue me. Eventually, she stopped teaching me. She let me figure it out myself. She put a mirror inside my solitary cell, and made me stare at my own reflection, for a whole day. 2 days, 3 days, I watched my reflection in the mirror, going from sobbing to dead silent. Going from a complete breakdown to an eerie calm. And then, it hit me. Mom and dad weren't coming. No one was coming to save me. The only person who could save me was me. From that moment on, something inside me changed. No more crying, no more begging. I swore that the day I got out, I would make every single one of them taste the exact same agony I went through. And now, I'm finally out. Observation log, end of day 5. Target's fear level, elevated. Emotional fluctuation, 0. First thing the next morning, I decided to head out. Not for a stroll, but to the company. The Joe Group headquarters, those massive twin towers, are the absolute landmarks of this city. 3 years ago, I used to intern there. Back then, I thought if I just worked hard enough, I could close the gap between me and Joe Ming in my parents' eyes. Instead, right in front of everyone, I was slapped in handcuffs, shoved into a car, and locked away in a correction center. Today, I wanted to go back. Not to cause a scene. Just to get back the personal belongings I left behind. The doctor said that reclaiming what's mine is a crucial part of rebuilding my personal boundaries. I didn't tell a single soul. I just grabbed a cab and went. When I stepped out, the sun was blindingly bright. Clutching my faded canvas bag, I walked straight toward the main entrance. Hold it right there. The security guard blocked my path. He looked me up and down, staring at my beat-up shirt. With pure, unfiltered disgust. Salespeople to the back door. This is the main entrance. I stopped in my tracks and glanced at his name tag. I'm not selling anything. My voice was quiet, but completely steady. I'm here to see Joe Chingyue. The guard scoffed like I just told the funniest joke in the world. He let out a snort. Looking for the CEO? Who the hell are you? Got an appointment? No, I answered honestly. But I do have this. I pulled a file out of my bag. It was a copy of the termination agreement I signed 3 years ago, stamped with the official seal of the Joe Group. I just want to collect the personal items I left in my office. Get lost. Who are you trying to fool with that piece of trash? The guard gave me an impatient shove. He hit me hard. My frail frame stumbled back, losing my footing for a couple of steps. A few office workers passing by started gathering around, pointing fingers and whispering, "Wait, isn't that the biological son of the Joe family? Keep your voice down." I heard he went completely crazy. Got locked up in an asylum for years. Mr. Joe Ming just sent out a memo this morning, saying his older brother has been emotionally unstable lately. He asked everyone to be patient if they ran into him here. Oh, that makes total sense. Joe Ming had already dug my grave in advance. With that sickeningly sweet facade, he successfully branded me a total psycho in everyone's mind. I looked at the guard, and then at the crowd of onlookers. I saw pity in their eyes. I saw mockery, but the one thing I didn't see was a single shred of respect. Mr. Joe, please leave immediately. The security guard stepped forward again, trying to forcefully drag me toward the curb. President Joe gave strict orders. People with your unstable condition are strictly forbidden from coming near the company lobby. His hand clamped down on my arm. It hurt, but I didn't struggle. My doctor told me when someone uses unlawful physical force against you, the best counterattack isn't violence. It's transparency. I freed up one hand, pulled out my old phone, and started a live stream. I immediately pointed the camera at the massive Joe Group logo, and then at the security guard's arrogant face. Everyone. I looked into the lens, my tone as calm as if I were reading a news script. I am Joe Ting, the biological son of the Joe family who went missing 3 years ago. Today, I returned to the Joe Group to retrieve my personal belongings. But I was stopped by security. The reason? President Joe gave the order, claiming I am mentally unstable. The security guard froze. The surrounding crowd instantly erupted in whispers, and the viewer count in the livestream skyrocketed. The Joe family's messy drama had always been a hot topic in the city. Now, I'd like to ask the security guard. I aimed the camera right at him, my gaze unwavering. What is your legal basis for diagnosing me as mentally unstable? Do you have a professional psychiatric evaluation? Or is it just a verbal claim from President Joe? The security guard was at a total loss for words. He lunged forward to snatch the phone. Put that phone down. Stop filming. I quickly sidestepped to dodge him. I smoothly flashed my ID card to the camera. If I am truly insane, then please show me a restraining order. If you don't have one, then your actions right now constitute harassment and violent obstruction. of a citizen exercising their legal rights. Are you crazy? The guard lashed out in frustration. Yes, you said I was sick, I replied calmly, my eyes sweeping over every single onlooker. So, I'm just following my doctor's orders. Since you've all labeled me a lunatic, then whatever a lunatic does is excusable. Right? I took a deliberate step forward, slamming straight into his chest. My bones are hard, striking him hard enough to hurt. But surprisingly, he didn't dare strike back. He was probably scared because the camera was right in his face. Or maybe he was terrified because the live stream already had over 10,000 viewers. Zhou Ting, are you done throwing this tantrum? A sharp, fierce woman's voice echoed from inside the lobby. Zhou Qingyue, clicking her red-soled heels, strode out with a massive entourage of executives trailing behind her. She glared at the crowd and my phone, her face turning a vivid, furious shade of purple. Turn it off. Shut that live stream down, right now. She growled, storming right up to me. Her voice was dripping with absolute authority. I stared back at her flawless makeup. President Zhou, I didn't call her sister. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm just settling our accounts. 3 years ago, you stood right here and publicly announced that I stole 100 million before sending me away. Now, 3 years later, you stand here and publicly announce that I'm mentally ill. She blocked my way. I turned the camera right into her face. My voice was dead calm, without a single ripple. You ruined my reputation, and now you want to take away my right to walk down the street? What makes you think I'll ever listen to you again? Zhou Qingyue was trembling with rage. She raised her hand, looking like she wanted to slap me across the face. I didn't flinch, I just looked straight into the lens. The doctor said, if you want me to disappear, the best way is to just kill me. But if you can't kill me, then you better learn to play by my rules. Zhou Qingyue's hand froze in midair. She saw the live stream blowing up with comments. CEO Zhou bullying her own brother. The Zhou family is totally sick. Seeing these comments, it finally dawned on her that the Zhou Ting she used to manipulate had died in that correction center. Zhou Ting, you've disappointed me so much. She pulled her hand back, her voice freezing cold. By doing all this, other than humiliating the Zhou family, what exactly do you get? I shot back with a question of my own. I let out a soft laugh. I'm not looking to get anything. I just want you to hurt. CEO Zhou, do you expect me to be reasonable? Or do you just want me to be your punching bag forever? Zhou Qingyue gritted her teeth, glaring daggers at me. But she couldn't say a single word. Right at that moment, a black Bentley pulled up to the curb. My second sister, Zhou Rushao, the high-profile lawyer dressed in an immaculate suit, pushed the door open and stepped out. She took in the scene, her eyes full of professional scrutiny. Ting Ting, that's enough. She walked over, her tone carrying a surprising hint of gentle coaxing. I am a lawyer, but I'm also your sister. Your current mental state really isn't fit for the public eye. Come with me, let me take you to the hospital for a full psych eval, okay? She was trying to weaponize professional jargon to brand me as crazy. I looked at her, and shut off the live stream, because I knew what I was about to say next wasn't meant for outsiders. Second sister, I addressed her with cold politeness. Since you're a lawyer, please show me your power of attorney right now. If you can't, then please leave. Otherwise, what you owe me will be much more than just an apology. When my second sister, Zhou Rushao, stood in front of me, the air around us seemed to freeze. She was as elegant as ever. Her crisp suit without a single wrinkle. The way she looked at me oozed a condescending kind of pity. I knew that look all too well. 3 years ago, that was the exact same look she gave me as I was pinned to the ground, thrashing and struggling. And then, word by word, she psychoanalyzed my criminal tendencies. Ting Ting, if you're done throwing your little tantrum, get in the car. My second sister's voice was soft, like she was coaxing a disobedient child. Your emotional swings have already crossed the line of normalcy. You need professional evaluation and treatment. She turned her head and shot Zhou Qingyue a reassuring glance, then looked back at me. As your family, it is our responsibility to watch over your health. Just be a good girl. Don't make things any uglier. Watch over. Those 2 words spilling from her mouth carried the sickening stench of rotting medicine. I stared at the gold-rimmed glasses resting on her nose. Behind those lenses, there was no sisterly affection, only cold calculation. She wanted to use her professional status to lock me back inside the cage of a psychiatric ward. My doctor once told me, when someone tries to define you with fake authority, you shouldn't just argue back. You have to expose them. I took a small step back, creating a safe, polite distance between us. Second sister, I called out to her softly, my tone completely flat, without a single ripple of emotion. In what capacity are you speaking to me right now? Second sister froze for a second, her brows furrowing slightly. I am your sister, of course. If you are my sister, then please drop the professional jargon. I stared at her jawline, my words barely more than a whisper. And if you are a lawyer, please show me your credentials and President Zhou's official letter of authorization. Otherwise, this little diagnosis you are giving me not only lacks legal procedure, but it also borders on defamation. Second sister's face visibly stiffened. She clearly hadn't expected me to use her own professional logic to shut her up. Ting Ting, do you really have to be so hostile? We are only doing this for your own good. For my own good? I cut her off, a tiny, mocking smirk pulling at the corner of my lips. But my eyes remained dead. 3 years ago, under the guise of "for my own good," you submitted a report of my psychological abnormalities to the court, cutting off my absolute last chance at survival. And now, you want to use that exact same excuse to lock me up in another hospital ward. I took a step closer to her, glaring right through her lenses. Are you my doctor, or just their tool? Second sister instinctively avoided my gaze, her voice dropping lower. Joe Ting, you are being way too paranoid. This is a textbook persecution complex. Every bit of your resistance right now just proves that you desperately need treatment. Proves it? I asked back. My doctor said that right and wrong aren't about feelings. They are about behavioral evidence. I pulled out my phone and tapped open a document I had downloaded. While waiting earlier, according to the mental health law, it is completely illegal to force medical treatment on someone against their will. Second sister, you are a hotshot lawyer. You should know this way better than I do. If you forcefully take me away today, I will use this as evidence and sue to get your license revoked. Second sister's pupils sharply contracted. The thing she cared about most was her perfect professional facade. I caught a flash of humiliated rage in her eyes. You are truly beyond saving. She finally lost her grip on that gentle, fake mask, her voice turning shrill and harsh. Joe Ting, do you really think memorizing a few legal clauses makes you invincible? That selfish, despicable nature in your bones will never change. Will never change. Those 3 words felt like a long, thin steel needle, piercing right into my absolute deepest trigger. The look in my eyes instantly turned freezing cold. All the surrounding noise seemed to fade away in that split second, leaving behind nothing but a dead, silent chill. You're right. I looked at her, my tone more polite than ever before, even carrying a hint of formal courtesy. I really can't change. I can't change the memory of my own sister, pushing me straight into the abyss 3 years ago, and I can't change the instinct of having to scheme every single minute just to survive in that place. I turned around, no longer looking at her completely stunned face. Lawyer Joe, I suggest you go back and flip through the case files. Look at how the little brother who begged you to believe him 3 years ago died bit by bit. The current me doesn't need your diagnosis, and I certainly don't need your salvation. Second sister stood frozen in place, gripping her briefcase so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She wanted to retort. She wanted to crush me with stricter logic. But she realized I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was like a block of ice. No matter what words she used to warm me up, she'd only get a biting chill in return. Joe Ting, stop right there. Joe Qingyue yelled from behind. I didn't stop walking. The doctor said leaving the source of noise is an effective way to stay sane. Carrying my canvas bag, I disappeared into the reflection of the Joe Group's revolving doors. But I didn't actually leave the building. I turned and slipped into the staff elevator on the side of the first floor, pressing the button for the 18th floor. That was the finance center. It was also where I interned 3 years ago. My resignation paperwork was never finished, and one of my private notebooks was still left up there. The doctor told me that taking back what belongs to you is the first step in rebuilding your personal boundaries. When the elevator doors opened, the 18th floor hallway was a total mess. The largest glass-walled conference room was packed with people. There were board directors, the external audit team, and a few suppliers looking absolutely furious. Joe Qingyue was sitting at the head of the table, rubbing her temples. Second sister hadn't followed me up. She was probably still downstairs trying to calm her out-of-control emotions. Meanwhile, Zhou Ming was standing right next to Joe Qingyue, holding a financial report, playing the role of the obedient, reliable brother stepping up in a crisis. I walked up to the conference room doors and pushed the glass doors open. I didn't make much noise, but everyone instantly stopped arguing and stared right at me. When Joe Qingyue saw me, her face darkened instantly. What are you doing up here? Are the security guards dead? Just as she was about to call someone to throw me out, a major supplier across the table slammed his hand down hard. President Joe, that's your family business. We're here today to collect our debts. That 100 million financial hole from 3 years ago. You still haven't given a reasonable explanation for it, which is why the books still won't balance. We can't justify this to our bosses. 100 million. The moment that number dropped, the air in the conference room turned ice cold. 3 years ago, it was this exact inexplicably missing 100 million. That became the death warrant sending me to the correctional facility. At the time, I was an intern in the finance department. Zhou Ming was there too. But the final results of their investigation claimed that my employee ID logged into the system and transferred the money. The cash vanished into an overseas shell account. Payment complete. Payment complete. I had absolutely no way to defend myself. Right on cue, Zhou Ming turned his head and looked at me, a flash of calculation gleaming in his eyes. He instantly switched to a deeply heartbroken expression. President Zhang, you know how it is with this account. Zhou Ming sighed as he looked at the supplier. His voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just loud enough for the entire room to hear. Back then, it was my older brother, Zhou Ting. He was young and naive, and he got hooked on gambling. He secretly embezzled this money. Because of this, my oldest sister had to put justice before family and sent him away to be reformed. He just got released today. He is not in a great state of mind right now. Please, for the sake of the Zhou family, give us a few days of grace. We will definitely balance the books. He delivered this speech flawlessly. Not only did it placate the supplier, but right in front of everyone. It firmly pinned the blame for what happened back then squarely onto my shoulders. He even smoothly explained away why I showed up here today. It was because I was just a guilty convict who had just been released. The way the board of directors looked at me was instantly filled with utter contempt. If this had been 3 years ago, facing such a public accusation, my eyes would have immediately welled up with tears. I would have rushed forward and grabbed Zhou Ming by the collar, screaming and demanding to know why he was spitting such vicious lies. I would have babbled incoherently, swearing to everyone that I never even touched that approval system, and then I would just be labeled as a compulsive liar and a total maniac. But right now, I just stood by the door, and even casually pulled up a chair and quietly sat down. Mr. Zhou, I stared at Zhou Ming's jawline. My tone was incredibly calm. What makes you think that I would still act like I used to, just standing around crying and screaming about how unfair it all is? Zhou Ming froze for a second. He was used to my hysterical outbursts, but he was not used to me being so terrifyingly quiet. Bro, stop causing a scene, okay? He forced a bitter smile. You signed the documents back then. The security cameras even caught you going into the server room. Those are ironclad proofs. You guys said I was sick. I completely ignored his little emotional performance and spoke right over him. So I am just following my doctor's treatment plan. The doctor said that as long as a lie is fabricated by humans, it will definitely leave behind some sort of information gap. I placed my faded canvas bag right on the table, unzipped it, and pulled out an old USB flash drive, gently pushing it to the center of the table. Since all the auditing experts are gathered here today, let's make a little wager. I raised my eyes, my gaze coldly sweeping across every single person in the room. I demand to publicly pull up the original payment chain for that $100 million transaction from back then. The authorization chain and the back-end system logs. Zhou Qingyue suddenly slammed her hands down and stood up. Zhou Ting, how much longer are you going to keep making a total fool of yourself? That case was closed a long time ago. That case was closed by your precious Zhou family. I stared right at her. My words were very soft, but they left absolutely no room for argument. I am not here to explain myself. Explanations are only for people who actually care. What I want right now is to settle this score on the spot. I pointed at the USB flash drive. 3 years ago, I didn't have the clearance to investigate. But over these past 3 years, I taught myself how to read code. Zhou Ming claims that I was the one who signed off on it. That is because the transfer required 2 digital security keys. One belonged to the chief financial officer, and the other belonged to me, the handler. The meeting room fell so dead silent that you could hear a pin drop. The auditor's professional instincts were triggered. They stared at me. I looked at Zhou Ming. Fine beads of sweat had already started to form on his forehead. But system logs don't lie. The exact time those funds were transferred was at 2:14 in the morning. All you guys have to do is check the IP address used to log into those 2 digital keys at the time, and you'll find something very interesting. My voice was very soft, like I was telling a bedtime story. Both keys were logged in on the exact same computer, and the MAC address of the router tied to that IP address doesn't belong to the company's server room. It belongs to the private apartment under Zhou Ming's name. The moment my voice dropped, the whole room erupted. A few external auditors immediately flipped open their laptops, their fingers flying across the keyboards. If what I was saying was true, that would mean that back then, someone was sitting in their own apartment, stealing both the directors and my keys at the exact same time. To pull off this transfer, Zhou Ming's face instantly turned deathly pale. He stared dead at the table, his lips starting to tremble. You're lying. This is a smear. Whether it's a smear or not, we'll know once we check. I leaned back in my chair, resting my crossed hands on my knees. The doctor said right and wrong aren't about feelings. They're about behavioral evidence. 3 minutes later, the head of the audit team looked up. He looked at Zhou Qingyue with a completely grave expression. Ms. Zhou, Mr. Zhou Ting is telling the truth. The archived logs from the bottom layer show that the IP address from back then was indeed not at the company. According to the network provider's records, It really was from young Master Zhou Ming's apartment. The air felt like it had been completely sucked out of the room at that moment. Every single gaze instantly shifted from me, right onto Zhou Ming. Zhou Ming's legs gave out, and he slumped hard into his chair. His proud little victim mask, his flawless web of lies, shattered to pieces in the face of cold, hard data. Sister, no, I didn't. Someone must have hacked my network. He frantically grabbed at Zhou Qingyu's sleeve. Zhou Qingyue just froze there. She looked at the data on the auditor's laptop, and then at Zhou Ming, whose face was dripping with cold sweat. Finally, she looked at me. Absolute shock was surging in her eyes, along with a trace of pure panic that finally broke the surface. She suddenly realized that 3 years ago she had personally taken her innocent biological younger brother and thrown him right into that man-eating hell. She ruined my entire life. There was a dead silence in the conference room. Zhou Qingyu's body was shaking slightly. She gritted her teeth so hard, and her eyes actually turned red. By any normal person's logic, she should be apologizing to me right now. She should be hugging me, crying her eyes out, telling me how sorry she is. But she is Zhou Qingyue. She's the head of the Zhou family, someone who values her pride and her results more than her own life. Even so, Zhou Qingyue took a deep breath, forcing herself to maintain her high and mighty posture. But her voice was shaking. Even if you weren't the one who transferred the money, did you really have to blow this up in front of all these outsiders today? Do you have any idea how much this is going to ruin the Zhou family's reputation? Even if you were wronged, couldn't you have just talked to me about it in private? You won't be satisfied until you completely humiliate me, will you? She was exactly the same as always, no matter what the truth was, as long as it damaged her interests. Then it was automatically my fault. I listened to her twisted logic. Without feeling a single ripple of emotion inside, I stood up, picked up the flash drive from the table, and put it back into my canvas bag. Then I walked right up to her. She thought I would complain, that I would get angry, but I only gave her a simple statement. President Zhou, my voice was colder than usual, and far more polite. What you owe me isn't an apology. It's consequences, and today is just the beginning. From today on, you are no longer family to me. I slung my bag over my shoulder and walked toward the door without looking back. I pulled open the glass door. Behind me, I heard the sound of Zhou Qingyue collapsing into her chair, along with the hushed, questioning voices of the board members. None of that had anything to do with me anymore. Walking up to the elevator, I took out my old phone and opened my notes. Observation log, day 8. Information gap shattered. Zhou Ming has lost his foundation of trust. Target subject, Zhou Qingyue, is experiencing cognitive collapse, but refuses to admit her mistakes. The doctor said, people who refuse to admit their faults will be punished even more severely by the rules. I looked at the screen and typed out the final line. The punishment begins. By the time I walked out the front doors of the company, night had fallen. I stood by the side of the road, watching the endless stream of cars going back and forth, and felt surprisingly calm. I had been putting on that act for 3 years. From the very first day I walked in, I started collecting evidence. I started analyzing every single one of Zhou Ming's flaws. I knew he would definitely leave a trace, because greedy people can never keep their hands clean. I waited 3 years for this day, and today, it finally came. But to be honest, it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. I thought that the moment the truth was revealed, I would laugh out loud. That I would be thrilled, that I would feel like I could finally breathe again. But when the moment actually came, I didn't feel anything at all. It was just like completing a routine task. Nothing more. My phone buzzed. It was a message from that number. You did well. I stared at those 3 words, and my lips twitched in what you could call a smile. Yeah, I did a good job. But what now? What am I supposed to do next? I don't know. The doctor said that after the reckoning comes a new beginning, but I can't even imagine what a new beginning looks like. Whatever. I won't think about it. I'll just head back first and figure it out. Observation log, day 8 concluded. Task completion, 80%. Emotional fluctuation, none. By the time I returned to the Zhou family mansion, the sky was almost entirely dark. Just as I walked through the door, I caught a scent I hadn't smelled in ages. It was squirrel mandarin fish. When I was 8, right after the Zhou family found me and brought me back, I was dark and scrawny from malnutrition. My mom made this exact dish for me once, with her own hands. Back then, she told me, Ting Ting, this is your home now. Mommy's going to make up for everything you've missed out on. And I believed her. But what she made up for was 3 years of absolute hell and countless times of hearing, you really disappoint me. Ting Ting, you're back. My mother hurried out of the kitchen in her apron, wearing this desperate, careful little smile. My third sister, Zhou Yiwei, was sitting on the couch too, holding a bunch of designer shopping bags. Ting Ting, come take a look. Your sister bought you some new clothes. And a laptop from that brand you used to love. Zhou Yiwei walked over and reached out, trying to grab my arm. I stepped aside to dodge her. It was a slight movement, but it felt like tearing a massive canyon between us. Mrs. Joe, Ms. Joe, I stared right at them. My voice was completely flat, dead calm. My doctor told me, sudden, unearned kindness usually stems from guilt and a need to overcompensate. What you two are doing right now is disrupting my routine. My mother's smile instantly froze. Her eyes welled up with tears. Ting ting, mommy knows she was wrong. Qingyue came home from the office this afternoon and told me everything. You really didn't take that 100 million back then. It was Xiao Ming. She choked on her sobs, trying to step forward and hug me. Mom hasn't had an easy time these past few years either. I've been wanting to make it up to you so badly. Please, just give Mom one more chance, okay? I looked at her. Her tears were genuine. Her guilt looked genuine, too. But my heart, it felt like a totally frozen lake. Not a single ripple could break through. Make it up to me? I walked over to the dining table and stared at that steaming plate of squirrel mandarin fish. 3 years ago, when Zhou Ming accused me of stealing, you slapped me right across the face in front of everyone. You told me the Zhou family didn't breed thieves like me. 2 years ago, when they locked me in solitary confinement for refusing to admit I was sick, I wrote to you. I begged you to get me out of there. And you wrote back telling me to rehabilitate properly. To stop embarrassing the family. 1 year ago, I was given shock treatments for refusing to take their pills. I was unconscious for 3 whole days. When President Zhou finally came to see me, you had her pass on a message. You said that as long as I was a good, obedient little girl, there would still be a place for me in the Zhou family. With every word I spoke, the color drained further from my mother's face, until finally, she could barely even stand. Stop. Please stop, Ting Ting. I'm begging you, stop talking. No, I am going to say it. I pulled out a chair and sat down, calmly taking out my phone. I opened up a file. My doctor told me, family isn't held together by blood. It's measured by actions. Here is the ledger for my last 3 years. I slid my phone right into the center of the table. 3 years of unlawful confinement. 1,095 days in total. 34 physical injuries in total, both major and minor. The deprivation of my right to an education, my right to a social life, and my basic human dignity. I've calculated it all into numbers. I looked up at them. My eyes were completely clear, without a trace of emotion, yet chilling enough to make them shiver. And now, you want to use a single meal, a few pieces of clothing, and one overdue apology, to wipe the slate clean? What makes you think I still need your love? Zhou Yui stared at the records on her phone. The pain I had documented, word by word. She suddenly covered her mouth and rushed into the bathroom. The sound of her vomiting echoed out. My mother slumped to the floor, grabbing the hem of my pants, sobbing hysterically. I'm so sorry, Mom never meant to send you to that place. It was Qingyue who said they could cure your compulsive lying, and Xiao Ming who said he saw you hanging out with thugs at school. I didn't take sides, Ting Ting. Mom just wanted to keep this family stable. Stable. I repeated the word, a self-deprecating smirk tugging at my lips. For your stability, you just disposed of me like a toxic asset. I leaned down and looked directly into my mother's eyes. My tone was polite, colder than ever before. Mrs. Zhou, I want you to admit one thing to my face. 3 years ago, when you signed that consent form to lock me up in that correction center, didn't you think that if I just disappeared, the Zhou family could go back to playing happy families? My mother's mouth hung open, her face streaked with tears. But she couldn't utter a single word. The pure terror in her eyes gave me the answer. Yes, back then, she also saw me as a stain that ruined her perfect family. I didn't bother explaining. Explanations are only for people who actually care. I stood up and grabbed my canvas bag. Save this plate of fish for Zhou Ming. He probably needs some family warmth right now to calm his nerves. I headed upstairs. Behind me, my mother kept screaming my name between her sobs. I didn't look back. The doctor once said, when you sever your attachments, you sever the source of your pain. Back in my room, I sat alone in the dark. The crying downstairs still hadn't stopped. That was simply them paying the price for their own guilt. I pulled out my old phone and opened the memo app. Observation log, day 9. The family ledger has been exposed. The enemy's defenses have collapsed. Target subject, Mrs. Zhou, is experiencing extreme guilt. But like the doctor said, this guilt only exists because the truth was dragged into the light. If the truth had stayed buried, they would still view me as the bad kid. I looked out the window. The streetlights in the Zhou family's garden flickered on, illuminating the perfectly manicured lawn. That was Zhou Ming's favorite view. Coldly, I typed out one last line. Family ties are dead. The audit continues. I was just about to go to sleep when my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The message was just one short sentence. Mr. Zhou, it seems you finally learned how to be a proper auditor. I'm proud of you. My grip on the phone tightened. It was her, the doctor at the correction center, who tore me apart with her own hands and molded me back into this shape. I stared at that line of text for a long time. Honestly, I didn't know how to reply. She praised me, I should be happy, but I don't feel a single trace of joy in my heart. Just then, Zhou Ming's scream echoed from downstairs, along with the sound of a heavy object crashing down. It seems, my mother's long overdue guilt has finally burned its way to Zhou Ming. But I know Zhou Ming won't just sit around and wait for his doom. He will definitely use public opinion to launch one last, desperate counterattack. Observation record, day 9 ends. External interference has increased. Emotional fluctuation, none. Early the next morning, Zhou Ming's counterattack arrived. It was faster than I expected, and far clumsier than I imagined. Half an hour ago, several local anonymous forums and short video platforms completely blew up. The headlines were purely sensational. The biological son of a wealthy family returns as a demon, violently beats adopted brother, drives his own mother insane. In the video, the camera was shaking violently. The footage of my mother slumped on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, was deliberately put in slow motion. They even paired it with miserable background music, and Zhou Ming's face. He turned his side to the camera, revealing half a red and swollen face. His eyes were filled with sheer terror and grievance. And the comment section, they were having a field day. 3 years in a correction center isn't enough for a psycho like this. He should be locked up for life. The Zhou family really raised a backstabbing monster. So what if he's their real son? He's rotten to the core. I feel so bad for Xiao Ming. He did so much for the Zhou family over these past 3 years, only for some lunatic to come back and try to steal the family fortune. I stared at those comments. They were nothing more than a meaningless gust of wind, failing to even brush past my heart. The doctor once said that public opinion is just cheap bullets. They can only hurt the people who care about their reputation. In me, I don't have a reputation. All I have is evidence. Suddenly, my bedroom door was violently pushed open. Zhou Qingyue stomped in with heavy steps, tightly gripping a tablet. She looked absolutely furious. The veins on her forehead were practically throbbing. Zhou Ting, is this what you wanted? She slammed the tablet down onto my lap, pointing furiously at the trending topics. The board of directors' phones are blowing up. All our partners are asking if the Zhou family is harboring a complete lunatic. You've completely destroyed the company's image. You need to go out there, apologize immediately, and do damage control. She glared at me, her tone still dripping with that same bossy arrogance. Even though she already knew I was falsely accused 3 years ago, in her eyes, the Zhou family's reputation will always matter more than my innocence. I casually picked up the tablet, and swiped the screen a few times. CEO Zhou. I looked up at her, my eyes as dead and calm as stagnant water. Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you just want me to keep taking the abuse? Zhou Qingyue froze. She completely didn't expect that I would use the very same words that she had repeated for the past 2 days to hit back at her. I'm telling you to apologize. This is for the greater good. She roared. The greater good is yours. I stood up slowly and placed the tablet on the desk. And I'm only here for the reckoning. I pull out the old phone holding all the evidence, and connect it to the computer. The doctor always said, lying is bad, and slander is even worse. Since Zhou Ming loves destroying people with public opinion, I guess I'll just have to teach him what an airtight chain of evidence looks like. My fingers fly across the keyboard. The first video I upload is the complete, uncut footage of what happened in the living room that night. No edits, no dramatic music, just a crystal clear recording of Zhou Ming provoking me, hurling insults at me. How he faked his fall, and, of course, my slap. The second file is the official police report. It spells it out plain as day. Zhou Ting filed the report. The Zhou family is under investigation for unlawful imprisonment. The third file is the kill shot. Screenshots of the original backend logs from the company 3 years ago, along with a draft email my second sister, Zhou Rushao, just sent to me to apologize. She was probably trying to do damage control. But little did she know, every single word she typed would become a blade in my hands. Send. I shut the laptop, watching the screen fade to black. You're insane. Zhou Qingyue stares at what I've just done, her voice trembling. You're going to destroy the entire Zhou family. I'm not the one destroying this family. I grab my bag, ready to leave. Like I told you, none of you are family to me anymore. I stop at the doorway and shoot her one last look. President Zhou, I can't give you the damage control you're begging for. All I can give you are the consequences of messing with me. I step out of the room. At the top of the stairs, Zhou Ming is standing in the shadows, glued to his phone. His expression morphs from smug arrogance to pure panic, and finally, into twisted, ugly rage. Zhou Ting, you really think you can win like this? He lunges at me through gritted teeth, trying to snatch my bag. I don't flinch, I just shoot out one hand, clamping onto his throat with terrifying precision. My grip is like a vice. He won't die, though. The doctor always said violence is a bad habit. I stare dead into his eyes, my voice like absolute ice. So let me teach you one more lesson, about knowing your place. I slam him hard against the wall. What you owe me, can't be fixed with a pathetic apology. Now let's see how you like burning in the fire of public opinion. Downstairs, my mother's wailing starts up again. But this time, nobody runs to comfort her. Because they're all too busy staring at their phones, watching the Joe family's golden, perfect facade. Getting ripped to shreds, piece by my own hands. I walk out the front doors of the Joe estate. The night wind is freezing. Suddenly, my phone screen lights up. A text from that unknown number. Not bad at all, but you didn't go far enough. I pocket my phone, staring at my frail shadow under the streetlights. They're right, it's not enough. The doctor always said, self-love is the ultimate rule. And my way of loving myself? It's making sure everyone who ever hurt me, they've all lost the right to hurt me. Observation log, day 10. The PR war has completely flipped. The Joe family's reputation is in ruins. The target, Joe Ming, has been completely exposed. The Joe family is trying to use blood ties to pressure me. But I don't feel any family affection anymore. The doctor said, this is a necessary step on the path to freedom. Early the next morning, the atmosphere in the Joe family villa was terrifyingly eerie. Joe Qingyue didn't go to the office. My second and third sisters were both there. Even my dad, who usually stays out of sight, was sitting in the main seat of the living room. His face was frighteningly dark. Ting Ting, come here, my dad spoke, his tone dripping with an undeniable sense of authority. I walked to the middle of the living room. Mr. Joe, I addressed him politely. My dad furrowed his brows deeply. What did you just call me? The doctor said that titles should reflect the current state of our relationship. I looked at him calmly. I don't belong to this family anymore. You ungrateful brat. He slammed the table and shot to his feet. Right at that moment, Joe Ming's piercing scream echoed from upstairs. He practically tumbled down the stairs, clutching a stack of documents. His face was dead pale, and his whole body was shaking. Dad, sis, something terrible happened. He slapped the documents onto the table. His fingertips were trembling. The company's project department just called me. They said the bidding proposal for our core project was leaked. The reserve price our rivals got is exactly the same as ours. Joe Qingyu's eyes instantly sharpened. What? That's the Joe Group's biggest project this year, worth 10 billion. And Joe Ming collapsed onto the sofa, covering his face as he sobbed. My personal seal that was in the safe, and the electronic security key that my oldest sister gave me, they're all gone. Every single gaze, instantly locked onto me like stabbing knives. Joe Ting, you went into my room last night. Joe Ming looked up at me, his eyes wide with fake terror. When I got up in the middle of the night, I saw you walk past my door. You were holding something in your hands. You're lying. My third sister, Joe Yui, yelled out instinctively, but her voice clearly lacked confidence. Joe Qingyue marched right up to me, the last shred of guilt in her eyes vanishing completely. How dare you sell out our company's core secrets? She backed me into a corner, her voice as cold as ice. Joe Ting, are you really not going to stop until you've completely destroyed the Joe family? My mom stood up too, her eyes filled with absolute despair. Ting Ting, how could you do something like this? That company is your father's life's work. Here we go again. This exact same, familiar accusation. They didn't even need a single shred of proof. As long as Joe Ming shed a tear, I was automatically the villain. You think I'm crazy? I looked right at Joe Qingyue and suddenly let out a soft laugh. My voice was dangerously quiet. Then I guess I'll just follow the doctor's treatment plan. I turned my head to look at Joe Ming, my tone as polite as a casual greeting. Mr. Joe, you said you saw me go into your room? Joe Ming gritted his teeth and nodded. Yes, just last night at 2 a.m, you claimed the company seal and the security keys went missing. Yes, those are the absolute lifeblood of our company. I nodded, and pulled out my faded, worn-out old phone from my canvas bag. My doctor says, lying is bad. Framing people is even worse. I pulled up a security video, and cast it straight to the living room TV. President Joe, Mr. Joe, you all should know by now, that a freak like me has a certain habit. Which is being extremely paranoid about my surroundings. On the screen, the small hallway right outside my door was crystal clear. At 2 a.m, my door never even budged. But, at 3 a.m, a figure in silk pajamas came sneaking out of Joe Ming's room. Holding a black box, he shoved it straight into the garbage chute at the end of the hall. That figure was Joe Ming. The living room fell dead silent. Joe Ming's fake crying stopped abruptly. He completely froze on the couch, his face turning pale, then sickly green. You faked this, you crazy psycho, you're trying to set me up. He screamed, lunging at the TV. Didn't stop him. I just tapped play on an audio file. Joe Ming's hushed voice echoed from the speakers. It was a conversation between him and some stranger. I've already dumped the stuff. I'll send the proposal to your email. Wire the rest of the money to that overseas account. As for Joe Ting, that perfect scapegoat, she is absolutely not bouncing back from this one. The audio was crystal clear. Even Joe Ming's greedy, excited panting was caught perfectly on tape. My dad's tightly clenched fists slowly loosened. The furious glare in his eyes faded into a dead, empty stare. Zhou Qingyue stared at the screen, her body swaying slightly, barely able to stand. My second sister, Zhou Rushao, tried to open her mouth to defend him. But she just looked like a duck getting strangled. She couldn't force out a single syllable. What on earth made you think I'd still be exactly the same as before? Just standing there, crying and begging people to believe my innocence? I stared down at Zhou Ming, my eyes no longer avoiding his. I looked at him like he was nothing but pure garbage. My doctor says right and wrong aren't about feelings, they are about hard evidence. Mr. Zhou, when you sent the company's proposal to our rivals ahead of time, you completely forgot to check for a voice recorder in your study. Oh, right, I was the one who hid that recorder in there on purpose. I put my phone away, looking around the room at these people, absolutely blindsided by the ugly truth. President Zhou, Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, I called them out one by one, my tone more dangerously polite than ever. The truth is right here. Every single nasty word you just used to accuse me now demands a proper reckoning. My mother suddenly lunged forward, trying to grab my hand. Ting ting, Mom was wrong. Mom was completely fooled by him. I'll kick him out right this second. I flinched away, dodging her hand. You don't owe me an apology. You owe me the consequences. I stared dead at the mother who used to constantly swear she loved me, but would always leave me stranded when it actually mattered. 3 years ago, you all saw the truth. You chose to sacrifice me to keep the peace in this family. Well, today you've seen the truth. And yet, your very first instinct is still to hush it up. I glanced at my dad, whose hand was just about to dial the PR department. He still wanted to sweep this whole mess under the rug. To save the Zhou family's face. To protect Zhou Ming, this adopted son who, despite being rotten to the core, still maintains a flawless public image. From this day forward, none of you are my family anymore. I grabbed my bag and headed for the front door. I've already anonymously leaked the project to the bidding regulators. The breach of contract penalties and the ruined reputation are exactly what you people deserve. Zhou Ting, stop right there. My dad roared from behind me. I stopped in my tracks and looked back. Do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you just want me to be your punching bag forever? I coldly dropped those words and pushed open the heavy doors of the Zhou estate. The wind outside was howling. My phone buzzed. It was a short text message. He blew his cover. Now, you can finally carve out this rotting flesh for good. I'm waiting for you at the gate. I stared at the streetlights in the distance. The doctor always said that loving yourself is the golden rule. I think I've finally learned how. Observation log, day 11. Framing trap countered. Zhou Ming's true colors are fully exposed. The Zhou family attempted to bury the truth once again. Failed. Family bonding system, permanently shut down. The doctor said I did a good job. Back in the living room of the Zhou family villa, my dad sat at the head of the sofa, slamming his cane violently against the floor. It made a heavy, muffled thud. He was waiting for Zhou Qingyue to bring back the final audit report from the company. And waiting for Zhou Ming's so-called reasonable explanation. I sat diagonally across from them in a single armchair, holding that faded old phone in my hands. My fingertips lightly brushed across the screen. The doctor said, when the entire chain of evidence points to a single exit, the truth is no longer a secret. It becomes a judgment. The front door was thrown open with a violent crash. Zhou Qingyue stormed in, bringing a freezing chill with her. In her hand, she clutched a crumpled, mangled stack of documents. Her eyes were bloodshot as she locked a death glare on Zhou Ming, who was sitting on the other side. Zhou Ming was curled up in my mom's arms, keeping his head down. His shoulders were trembling as he sobbed. Sis, you have to listen to me. I swear, I was framed. Zhou Ming's voice cracked with tears. It was the same old practiced, pathetic victim act. Zhou Qingyue didn't say a word. She just marched up and violently smacked that stack of papers right across Zhou Ming's face. The pages scattered all over the floor. Every single sheet bore the official red stamps of the bank and the police. Framed? Zhou Qingyue's voice was shaking. It was the sound of someone completely losing control out of pure, unadulterated rage. Zhou Ming, that offshore account with 100 million. It was opened under your exact name. And that anonymous email used to frame Zhou Ting? IP 55500872719.9.50. The IP address it was sent from points exactly to your IP 55500872777.9.50. Laptop in the study room. IP 55000B7277.3.50. You tell me, who could possibly hack into your own brain to frame you? Zhou Ming's sobbing came to a dead halt. He stared at the evidence scattered on the floor. His face drained from a sickly green to sheer white, before settling into the lifeless color of dead ashes. My mom's eyes went wide. She instinctively pulled her arms away from Zhou Ming. Ming, is what Qingyue saying true? My mom's voice was shaking uncontrollably. My dad suddenly shot up from his seat. He crossed the room to Zhou Ming in 2 strides and delivered a deafening slap across his face. You bastard, my dad roared, his chest heaving violently. Our Zhou family raised you for 20 years. And you ruined my company with your own hands, all for that little bit of money. You even sent your brother to a place like that. Zhou Ming's head was knocked sideways from the blow. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. But suddenly, he dropped the act. He slowly raised his head, wiped the blood from his mouth, and let out a bone-chilling sneer. My brother? Zhou Ming glared at my dad, his eyes filled with pure venom. What kind of brother is he? Ever since he came back. Did any of you even look at me anymore? I just wanted some security. Is that so wrong? My mom stared at this completely unrecognizable adopted son, her body swaying before she collapsed onto the sofa. She burst into uncontrollable sobs. Just call the police. My dad closed his eyes. His voice sounded like it had aged 10 years in an instant. Zhou Qingyue looked at me, her eyes overflowing with shattered guilt. Ting Ting, I'm so sorry. Your big sister was completely blind. She walked toward me, reaching out to take my hand. I pulled my hand back, avoiding her touch entirely. President Zhou, I said, staring blankly at her collarbone. My tone was dead flat, without a single ripple of emotion. My doctor said that delayed justice is only there to soothe the conscience of the abusers. Zhou Qingyue's hand froze in midair. I pulled a few pre-printed forms from my bag and spread them out flat on the coffee table. Since the truth is finally out in the open, let's do a final settlement. I looked around at the room full of weeping people. Mr. Zhou, Mrs. Zhou, President Zhou. I called out their formal titles, one by one. Stealing that 100 million was Zhou Ming's doing. He will face the legal consequences for that. But the decision to send me to that correctional facility 3 years ago, that was on all of you. I slid a pen across the table. I do not accept verbal apologies. An apology is the cheapest thing in the world. I want every single one of you, regarding your decision to illegally deprive me of my freedom 3 years ago, to write a formal written statement, sign it, and stamp it. Zhou Qingyue was completely stunned. What do you need this for? My doctor said, only by cementing your mistakes on paper. Will people actually feel the pain of what they did? I looked at her with dead calm. You'd all rather admit that your adopted son was wrong, than admit to your own active role in destroying me back then. Sign it. Only after you sign this will the process of paying back what you owe me truly begin. My dad stared at the statement, his hands shaking so violently he couldn't even grip the pen. Ting Ting, does it really have to come to this? We're family. I let out a soft, hollow laugh. Then I'll just follow the doctor's plan. From this day forward, there is no family of mine in the Zhou household. There are only my debtors. Zhou Qingyue gritted her teeth, and was the first to sign her name. Her tears hit the paper, smudging the ink. My dad and mom signed too. When they were signing, they moved so slowly, like it drained a lifetime of strength. I gathered up the signed declarations, and carefully slipped them into a plastic folder. Zhou Qingyue looked at me, her voice choked up. Ting Ting, we found out the truth, and we've dealt with Zhou Ming. Can you please stay? I picked up my canvas bag and looked toward the front door. The night was heavy out there. The doctor said, once a dead limb is amputated, it should never be reattached. I walked out of the Zhou family's living room without looking back. Behind me were my mother's desperate, sobbing cries, and Zhou Qingyue apologizing over and over again. But inside, I was so quiet, truly quiet. My phone buzzed once. The unsaved number sent a text. Did you get the stuff? I replied with a single word. Yeah. A reply came back instantly. Very good. Come back, Mr. Zhou. I stared at that text message, and for the very first time, a faint ripple of emotion flickered in my eyes. Observation log, day 12. The truth has come to light. Debtor identity confirmed. The Zhou family finally admitted to their sins. But they've lost my forgiveness forever. The doctor said, only after a full reckoning comes true freedom. The Zhou family villa had never been this incredibly spotless before. Zhou Ming was taken away for investigation. The family portrait that used to hang right in the middle of the living room, featuring the 5 of them plus an adopted son, was personally taken down by my dad. He threw it into the storage room, frame and all. For the very first time, the Zhou family reached a bizarre united front. Kick out the adopted son. Investigate the past. Compensate the biological daughter. The dining table was covered in a feast. Every single dish was made based on my faint memories from before I was 8 years old living with the Zhou family. My dad sat at the head of the table. My mom sat on the side, and my 3 sisters were lined up in order. They were all staring at me. Their eyes were completely full of this nauseating, loving affection. Ting Ting, here are your favorite sweet and sour ribs. Mom made them just for you. My mom put a piece of meat into my bowl, her hand trembling slightly. Mom was so foolish before. Mom was blinded by that ungrateful wretch. From now on, Mom will make it up to you, 1,000 times over. I stared at the rib in my bowl. The doctor said, when someone starts using food to say sorry, it means they've lost any meaningful way to connect. I didn't pick up my chopsticks. Mrs. Joe, I gently pushed the bowl away. My movements were as steady as pushing aside some useless paperwork. The doctor said, eating food that's been expired for 3 years will poison you. Affection that's 3 years too late will do the exact same thing. My mom's smile froze instantly. Tears streamed from her eyes. Ting ting, you still blame Mom, don't you? Mom really knows she was wrong. Ms. Joe, I don't blame you. I looked right at her, my tone perfectly polite. But it felt like there was a thick pane of bulletproof glass between us. Blaming someone takes a massive amount of emotion, and I had no emotions left. My oldest sister, Jo Qingyue, suddenly spoke up. Her voice was hoarse, carrying a trace of unquestionable authority. Jo Ting, now that the truth is out, I will immediately issue a statement from the company to restore your reputation. I've already had 5% of the Jo Group's original shares transferred to your name. As compensation, she looked at me, her eyes giving off this oppressive vibe of, look at me, I've compromised this much. You should be satisfied with it. I looked at my oldest sister. 3 years ago, it was also her standing right here, personally slapping me across the face. Saying a thief like me didn't deserve the Jo family name. President Joe. I smiled, but my eyes didn't shift. Are you asking me to be reasonable, or are you expecting me to just keep taking your abuse? Jo Qingyue froze, her face turning somewhat pale. Do you really think 5% of your shares can buy off my 3 years of illegal confinement? Do you think a single statement can fill the blank voids in my brain caused by the electroshock therapy? I took a bank card out of my bag and gently pushed it to the center of the dining table. This is the cash equivalent of everything you've given me these past few days. I'm not explaining myself. Explanations are for people who actually care. Is everything you're doing right now meant to get me back? Or is it just to make yourselves feel better? These words were like a scalpel, publicly slicing away the hypocritical skin off everyone in the Jo family. The living room fell into a dead silence. The wine glass in my dad's hand slammed onto the table with a sharp crash, spilling liquor everywhere. Jo Ting, what exactly do you want? My dad growled, his eyes slightly red. Jo Ming is already ruined. Are you trying to destroy the rest of us too? We are family. You can't just sever blood ties. Blood ties. What a convenient phrase. It was the very chain that dragged me into the abyss 3 years ago. And the hook trying to drag me back into the dungeon 3 years later. My doctor said right and wrong aren't about feelings. They are about behavioral evidence. I stood up and smoothed out my washed-out shirt. Behavioral evidence shows that your actions over the past 3 years were purely abuse. And what you're doing right now, that's just to make yourselves feel better. My third sister, Jo Yui, suddenly rushed over, opening her arms to hug me. Crying uncontrollably. Ting ting, your third sister is begging you. Please don't be so cold. I'll take you out sketching. I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Let's just start over, okay? I turned sideways and dodged her embrace with absolute precision. My hands stayed tucked inside my pockets, never coming out. Third sister. It was the last time I would ever call her that. My tone was as empty as a breeze. You just crossed my safe distance. My doctor said, touching someone against their will is considered assault. I looked at her hands frozen in midair. There was no hatred in my eyes. Only a complete and utter numbness. What makes you think that I still need any of you to believe me? From today on, none of you hold the title of family to me. We only have a debt relationship. I turned and walked toward the stairs, every step planted firmly. Behind me came my mother's heart-wrenching wails and my father's heavy sigh. And Jo Qingyue's powerless roars. It was all just noise. Back in my room, I closed the door. I drew the heavy curtains shut and took out my old phone. I opened the Notes app and typed out the final line of today's log. Observation log, day 13. Massive amounts of emotional noise. Test conclusion. They want to eliminate their guilt by repairing the relationship. Directive. Refuse repair. Terminate relationship. I started packing my bags. I didn't have much. Just that old canvas bag. The doctor says loving yourself is the first rule. And in my rules for loving myself, there is absolutely no place for the Jo family. I picked up my bag, taking one last look at this room filled with the stench of decay. The Jo family actually thought that by getting rid of Jo Ming, everything could go right back to how it was 3 years ago. They didn't know that the Jo Ting who just wanted to be loved 3 years ago had already died on that ice-cold electroshock bed. As I walked down the stairs, everyone in the Jo family was still standing frozen in the dining room. I didn't say goodbye, no lingering attachments. I just pushed open those magnificent front doors and walked straight out. The night air outside was bitterly cold. Carrying that faded canvas bag, I walked to the gates of the Jo family mansion. This would be the last time I ever stood here. 3 years ago, I was dragged out. A few days ago, I was invited back. And now, I was leaving on my own. Ting ting, a heavy thud came from behind me, followed by my mother's agonizing, desperate screams. She hadn't even put on her shoes. She dropped straight to her knees on the bare marble floor, her hands gripping my pant legs in a death grip. Mom is begging you, please don't go. Mom will give her life to you, okay? Everything before was my fault. I never should have trusted that ungrateful backstabber. Mom will go die right now, just as long as you stay. I looked down at her incredibly well-maintained hands, the knuckles now turning white from gripping so hard. 3 years ago, these same hands had gripped just as hard. Except back then, she was violently pushing me away, telling me to never come back and embarrass the Joe family. Mrs. Joe, I called her softly. My tone completely flat and even. The doctor says, emotional breakdowns are a sign of incompetence. Kneeling cannot change the facts. That agreement you signed 3 years ago has been in effect for over 1,000 days. For these past 1,000 days, my home has not been with the Joe family. She looked up at me, her face completely covered in tears. Her eyes filled with absolute terror and pleading. No, your last name is Joe. You are my own flesh and blood. You are a part of the Joe family. Blood is thicker than water. Ting ting, are you really going to listen to what some doctor said? And just abandon us completely? Third sister, Jo Yui, stood off to the side, crying so hard her whole body was violently shaking. She reached out a hand, wanting to grab the cuff of my sleeve, but then remembering what I just said. She suddenly shrank back. Ting ting, please, I'm begging you. Let's go redo the paternity test. We'll invite the whole city. We'll announce it to everyone that you are the true, one and only young master of the Joe family. We'll make it up to you. We'll give you the absolute best. My father had been standing in the shadows, silent. Now, he stepped forward, his voice deep and heavy, carrying a self-righteous tone of comfort. Ting ting, I know you're throwing a tantrum and I know you feel wronged. Shares, cars, villas, whatever you want. I, Joe Jinan, will give it all to you today. Just stop talking about cutting ties. The doors of the Joe family will always be open for you. After all, you have my blood running through your veins. I looked at him, I looked at this father, who still thought money and bloodlines could fix everything. Mr. Joe, I finally spoke, my eyes perfectly calm, yet staring at him like he was a lifeless object. What makes you think that I still need you to believe me? What makes you think I'd lock myself back in this cage for your blood-stained money? I pulled a brown envelope from my pocket and set it on the console table. These are the formal notices to sever all ties and the paperwork to remove my name from the family registry. I've already applied to be my own independent household. From now on, my last name isn't Joe. I am just me. The doctor said, loving yourself is the #1 rule. Staying here would force me to break that rule. My second sister, Jo Rushao, originally wanted to use legal jargon to make me stay. But the moment she saw that envelope, this top-tier lawyer, who never showed a single weakness in court, just collapsed onto the couch. You're even taking your name off the registry? She stared at me, completely devastated. Joe Ting, you can't sever a bloodline legally. Doing this, aside from hurting us, what's the point? The point? I echoed, letting out a soft, dry laugh. I'm not looking for a point. I just want an end. An end to 3 long years of torture. Just then, my oldest sister, Jo Chinyue, threw the door open and rushed in. In her hands was an agreement she had just signed, handing over all her controlling shares in the company. Her eyes were completely bloodshot, her voice terribly hoarse. Joe Ting, look at this. I've already turned Joe Ming over to the police. And I can give you the entire company. You hate me, don't you? Then stay. You can torture me however you want, just don't go. The shattered look in her eyes was real. Her remorse was real. But to me, it was just the Joe family's typical, self-serving guilt trip. CEO Joe. I looked right at her. My words were incredibly soft. I don't hate you. Hate is reserved for people you actually care about. I don't care what you think. I gently pulled away from my mother's grasp. It was such a smooth, effortless motion. Not a single trace of hesitation. As if her final string had snapped. My mother fainted dead away. The Joe family spiraled into absolute chaos. My father's furious roars, my third sister's wailing, my second sister's sobbing. That was the Joe family's facade of dignity, built up for decades, being completely and utterly ripped away by me. I walked to the door. The night breeze was a bit chilly, but it felt incredibly soothing against my face. I paused for a moment, keeping my back to them. I'm going to meet someone. Don't come looking for me. The doctor said my new life begins today. I stepped out the gates. Behind me, that dazzling, luxurious mansion looked just like a solitary grave under the streetlights. And the people living inside were the very ones who buried me alive 3 years ago. The truth has finally come to light. But the old Joe Ting is gone forever. I pulled out my phone and lit up the screen. There was just one text from an unsaved number. See you at the gate. I took a deep breath and walked toward the silhouette waiting under the streetlight. My steps were so light, it was as if I'd never been hurt at all. At an old bus stop on the edge of the city, I stood there gripping my faded canvas bag. I waited under the streetlight. No one from the Joe family followed me. That formal notice of severed ties I left them. That's enough to keep Joe Rushow busy for a good half-month. And it's more than enough for my dad to choke on the bitter taste of utter isolation every single night. The doctor told me, once the score is settled, never look back at the burning building. Because those agonizing screams from the flames, they're only trying to drag you back to die with them. A black SUV pulled up quietly right in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing a fiercely calm, almost unnervingly pale face. Wei Yuru. She was wearing her usual gold-rimmed glasses, her hair pulled back in a strict, tight bun. When her eyes fell on me, she didn't look like someone reuniting with an old friend. It felt more like she was analyzing a flawless set of test data. "You're late by 3 minutes and 14 seconds, she said. Her voice sounded just like a printed academic paper, cold and brutally precise. That pathetic little farewell performance from the Joe family, it cost you completely unnecessary minutes of your life. I pulled the door open and slid into the passenger seat. The AC was blasting, almost bone-chillingly cold, but I actually loved it. Compared to that suffocating, fake warmth of the Joe family, this freezing cold made me feel genuinely safe. They figured it out, I said, staring at the pitch-black road ahead. Keeping my voice perfectly steady. Joe Ming is locked up in the detention center. My mom literally dropped to her knees to beg me. Joe Qingyue practically tried to hand me the entire Joe Corporation. And Joe Yui, she cried until her eyes swelled shut. I paused for a second, feeling Wei Yuru's gaze drop to my white-knuckled grip on my bag. But honestly, I don't feel like laughing. And I don't feel a single ounce of satisfaction. I just feel absolutely nothing. Wei Yuru started the engine. The car let out a deep, rumbling growl. Regret is a luxury reserved for abusers. It has absolutely nothing to do with the victim. She kept her eyes locked on the road, her long, pale fingers tapping rhythmically against the steering wheel. Joe Ting, you need to understand something. The agony they're feeling right now is entirely because they've lost their sick control over you. It's certainly not because they magically grew a conscience. If they hadn't shipped you off to that correction center, you never would have found the strength to cut them off completely. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. 3 years ago, Wei Yuru got suspended over ethical issues. She wasn't locked up by mistake. She walked into that twisted, malicious correctional system on purpose, just to find the perfect test subject. And I, with nowhere to turn for help, became her ultimate prey. She taught me how to shut down my emotions. She taught me how to use cold, hard logic to dissect anyone who tried to use me. She told me, loving yourself is the only ticket out of hell. But I knew, the very moment I finally learned to love myself, I also lost the ability to love anyone else, forever. The records from these past 3 years. Did the Joe family get them? She asked. They've been sent. I opened my eyes, watching the streets blur past the window. That rule book you wrote, and the raw data of my body's reactions during the electroshock sessions. They're going to see it all. They're going to look at that data and slowly realize how their own flesh and blood, the son who used to cry tears of joy over a simple bowl of mom soup, how he slowly died right in front of them. Suddenly, Wei Yuru stopped the car right in the middle of the Cross-Sea Bridge. She killed the engine and turned to look at me. Behind her glasses, her eyes gleamed with a dark, obsessive possessiveness. Joe Ting, the Joe family, right now. What are they to you? I stared back into those cold, calculating eyes, and whispered, a garbage dump. Perfect. A tiny smirk crept onto her lips. It was the only trace of emotion she'd shown all night. From this day forward, you are my masterpiece. You belong entirely to me. The outside world is still full of noise, but in here, the rules never change. She pulled an old correctional facility badge from her pocket. It was mine. She pinned it to my collar herself. Her fingertips brushed against my skin, sending a violent shiver down my spine. Mr. Joe, welcome home. I looked out at the glittering, magnificent city in the distance. Toward the Joe family's mansion. It was blazing with lights. My dad would be up all night in his study, agonizing over that notice. My mom would be clutching my old baby clothes, crying until dawn. Joe Qingyue finally has the entire company, but she'll never get back the little brother who used to smile so goofily at her. They won every single battle, but lost the only person who just wanted them to love him. And I don't need love anymore. I pulled my old shirt a little tighter. The buttons still fastened tightly all the way up to my neck. The doctor told me this is what freedom feels like. I closed my eyes and let the car start up again. Driving into the endless dark. We drove for a really long time. So long, I almost fell asleep. By the time I opened my eyes again, we were parked in front of an old, rundown building. We're here, Wei Yuru said. I pushed the door open and stepped out. It was just a totally normal apartment building. Gray walls, a rusty security gate, and a flickering light bulb in the stairwell. Starting today, you're living here. Wei Yuru walked ahead of me, leading me upstairs. 3rd floor, the apartment on the left. She took out the keys, opened the door, and stepped aside to let me in. The place wasn't big, just a 1-bedroom apartment. It was spotlessly clean and the furniture was pretty basic. But it had everything I needed. My clinic is right nearby. Call me anytime if you need anything, she said. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking around the unfamiliar space. Is this my new home? I asked. Yes. She looked at me. Why? Are you not happy with it? I shook my head. No, it's not that. I'm just not used to it. After getting out of that gilded cage, suddenly having a place that truly belongs to me. I just didn't quite know how to react. Wei Yuru walked to the door and looked back at me. Zhou Ting, you've done everything you needed to do, she said. From now on, you can do whatever you want. Whatever I want? I froze for a second. I don't know what I want. She stayed silent for a moment, then said, take your time to figure it out. You've got plenty of time now, anyway. The door closed. I stood alone in that tiny apartment, listening to the occasional sound of cars outside and the faint voices of the neighbors. It was so quiet, so completely unfamiliar. I walked over to the window, pulled back the curtains, and stared out at the city night. The city was brightly lit, bustling with endless traffic. But none of it had anything to do with me. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Observation log, day 14. New environment, new identity, new beginning, emotional state fluctuating. The doctor says, this is what freedom feels like. I stared at those words for a really long time. Freedom. Is this really freedom? I didn't know, but at least it was better than being in that place. I put my phone down, lay back on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The ceiling was white, exactly like the one in that solitary confinement cell at the reform school. But this time, I knew the door was unlocked. I could leave whenever I wanted, and come back whenever I wanted. I guess this really is freedom. I closed my eyes, and a memory suddenly flashed into my mind. A long, long time ago, there was a little boy. It was his first time being brought to the Zhou family. He stood at the gates of the villa, looking up at that magnificent mansion. He was so overjoyed, thinking he finally had a real home. He didn't know, that wasn't a home at all. It was a tomb, and now, that little boy is dead. The one who survived is someone else. Someone who doesn't need a home anymore. Observation log, day 14, concluded. 1 month later, I was sitting in Wei Yuru's clinic, watching the sunlight outside the window. Today was my final psychological evaluation. All my results came back perfectly stable. Wei Yuru set the report down and looked right at me. Congratulations, Zhou Ting. You've officially graduated. I just nodded. I didn't feel anything in particular. Honestly, this past month had been incredibly peaceful. I'd wake up every morning at 6, wash up, hang my towel exactly 5 centimeters from the edge of the wall, and then head out for a walk. I'd buy groceries, cook my meals, read my books, and go to sleep. Sometimes, Wei Yuru would come looking for me, just to take me back to her clinic to sit for a while. Or we'd go out and grab a bite to eat. She kept saying I was recovering beautifully. I told her I didn't feel like I was recovering at all. She just said, then you're doing it perfectly. So, what are your plans now? She asked. I thought about it for a second. I don't know. Then just embrace not knowing. She replied, you've got all the time in the world anyway. I actually smiled. It was the very first time I had smiled in a month. Wei Yuru watched me smile, and a flicker of something crossed her eyes. But it vanished just as quickly. Zhou Ting, she suddenly called out to me. Do you still hate them? I froze for a moment. To be completely honest, I really don't know. A month ago, I didn't think I hated them. Even now, I still don't feel like I do. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, just staring at the ceiling, certain memories will just flash through my mind. My mom, holding Zhou Ming tightly, looking at me with absolute disgust. My dad, standing up on the steps, with his back turned completely to me. The dead, cold look on Zhou Qingyu's face when she signed that power of attorney. How terrifyingly calm my second sister was when she handed over that fake evidence. And the sick amusement hiding in Zhou Ming's eyes when he faked that fall. All these scenes just play out like a movie, looping endlessly in my head. But the weirdest part is, when I watch these scenes replay, I feel absolutely nothing inside. It's like I'm watching someone else's story. I really don't know, I answered honestly. Wei Yuru just nodded and didn't push any further. She stood up, walking over to the window with her back to me. Zhou Ting, have you ever thought that maybe, one day, you'll actually forgive them? I just stared at her back. I thought it over. Maybe, but that day definitely isn't today. Wei Yuru didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders shift just a little. Let's go, she said. I'll take you home. By the time we walked out of the clinic, it was already pitch black outside. There weren't many people left on the street. The streetlights stretched our shadows out so long across the pavement. Wei Yuru and I walked side by side in complete silence. When we finally reached the entrance of my little apartment building, she stopped walking. I'll leave you here, she said quietly. I looked at her, the moonlight shining on her face. Her face, usually so calm and composed, actually looked a little softer right now. Dr. Wei, I called out suddenly. Thank you. She froze for a second. Then, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. It was the first time she ever looked at me like that. It wasn't that cool, detached smile. It was a genuine smile. You're welcome, she said. Zhou Ting, take good care of yourself. I nodded, and she turned to leave. I stood at the doorway, watching her silhouette disappear into the night. Then I went upstairs, and opened the door to my room. The room was so quiet. I walked over to the window. Looking out at the night view, the city was still as bustling as ever. But this time, it didn't feel quite so alien to me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Ting Ting, Mom is sick. Can you come back and see me? I stared at those words. I stared at them for a long time. Then, I put the phone back in my pocket. I didn't reply. I lay back down on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. It was still plain white. But this time, it didn't feel so much like a solitary confinement cell anymore. I closed my eyes and those old memories surfaced in my mind again. But this time, the images slowly started to fade. Like old, faded photographs, vanishing bit by bit into the depths of my memory. Maybe someday I'll go back. Or maybe I never will. But right now, I just want to get a good night's sleep. Observation log. The final day. All vitals are normal. Objective completed. Independent personality successfully established, the doctor said.